All right, welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome to Defense Diaries. I'm your host, Bob Mata, and this is our continuing coverage of the people of the state of Indiana versus Richard Allen. This is day 5, part 2. We had to take a quick break so I could fulfill a commitment to my buddy Vinny over there on Kohr TV. Went over there and hung out for a bit. Now we're back. So just a little bit of a little bit of a rewind, a recap of what we've already talked about. We talked about the first witness of the day, who was one of the eyewitnesses, Sarah Carbaugh. Very interesting witness who I felt at the end of the day really came off as not credible. And not because of necessarily what she was saying, but because of her unwarranted reactions. I've never seen an eyewitness who's just somebody who happened upon a scene or saw something that's testifying get this combative with a defense attorney, like in any case. It's very rare. The combative ones are the ones that have something at stake. It's the ones that are the defendants. It's law enforcement if they're being crossed by defense attorneys. Like, it's those kind of witnesses, like just eyewitnesses that are lay people that just saw something and are just coming in to testify. You just don't see them getting that animated. And she was strange, and like that wasn't just me thinking that. Like, this is like everybody I talked to. I had lunch with Barb McDonald, and like we were both like, "What was going on with Sarah Carbaugh?" We were both like, "Man, I wish that thing would have been streamed. Like, Jay would have done like 10 videos, like shorts on her, because she was a gold mine of shorts. We're doing this again. Is that what we're doing this again?" I was like, "What in the world is going on?" So we moved on from Sarah, who ultimately, kind of in the scope of the state's timeline, they really kind of need her to be credible, because she's the person that would have Bridge Guy walking back post-crime down the street towards his car in a time frame that works with their timeline. So to have her kind of come out and, in my estimation, really perform very poorly, I think really hurt the state in terms of their eyewitnesses. Like, none of their 4 eyewitnesses, with the exception of Betsy Blair, who's to be continued. I promise you this. Betsy Blair is getting called again, primarily because of that beyond the scope objection by the state when they tried to get in to her timeline as to when she came back and what she saw or didn't see in the OPS parking lot on the 13th at around 2:15. Like, her testimony, if it goes as the defense thinks it's going to go, is going to be pretty powerful for the state in terms of attacking the timeline. You guys know I'm always talking about attacking the old timeline. It's one of those things that it's good to do when there's a lot of gaping holes in timeline. If you can attack a timeline, you know what you do? You attack the timeline. Sometime, a lot of times, not a lot of times, but sometimes you'll have a timeline that's in stone. There is no attacking it. They got you cornered. You're cornered in. There's no moving. Stuck in that timeline. But this ain't that case. I'm here to tell you. I'm here to tell you. All right. So then we went into the autopsy, which I probably, and again, I keep forgetting to say it about all of the eyewitnesses. Not one of them has been asked, nor have they offered by either side an in-court identification of Rick Allen saying that's Bridge Guy. That's the guy I saw. Not one. So you take that for whatever it's worth. You take that for whatever it's worth. It's like I saw people on Twitter trying to come with, oh, well, he was wearing a mask. He had his head down. Not Carbaugh. She says she saw him. She said they didn't make eye contact. I mean, she said she saw the guy's earlobes. She got a good look at him. No ID. No in-court ID. Not one ID by any of the four witnesses. Only one of them saying that he had a face cover on made an identification of Richard Allen in court. So you give that whatever weight you all choose to give it, and I'll give it the weight that I choose to give it. So then we of course got into the autopsies by the good doctor, and I probably should have given a bit of a trigger. The autopsies are hard to listen to. They're very, very clinical, obviously. If you've ever had the opportunity to listen to a forensic pathologist speak just in general or testify in court, they are very matter of fact. They have removed all emotion from what their job is. They're just coming in, talking as matter of factly as they can about what they observed, what their autopsy showed, and then they render opinions if they can. And there's no emotion involved with it, And the fact of the matter is that you have this dichotomy going on in that courtroom because, as I was talking about, when you have the proof of death witnesses, that is unequivocally the hardest time for family members of the victims to be in that courtroom because you're hearing the details. But I talked to Anna Williams today, and I was saying, I'm so sorry that you're having to go through this, and I know how hard it is. And she said something. She's like, well, she's like kind of like finally getting to hear like exactly what happened like kind of worked for me. It's like it was kind of a relief to like finally know what happened, because like I said, law enforcement's never informing, at least in my experience, never informing the family of all the details of their investigation and all the things that a family might be wondering as, the case progresses. And so I felt for her deeply. So yeah, it's just having the clinical side, like battling the emotion of seeing what you're seeing is such a strange thing to have occur, and it's painful to be in there, but like when I'm like, and like I was saying on the first live tonight, for me, who's not real good about just kind of blood in general, it makes me uncomfortable. It's weird. I don't know why that is. It's just always like the sight of blood just makes me uncomfortable, like extremely uncomfortable. But when I'm like in the middle of looking at an autopsy, it comes across like so clinical. It's almost like it's textbook. You're looking at physiology. It's just it feels different in some kind of way. Is strange as that sounds. It's just it doesn't feel the same because it's like you're looking at some of these wounds that they were putting up on the big 85-inch screen, and it was typically I'd be like, oh, but if I see that same picture at the crime scene, it's hard for me to look at it. Whereas when I can see the wound, when it's been cleaned and he's just giving a clinical description of the wound as he sees it, and he's opining on certain things, it's different. It's kind of weird how the brain works like that. So at any rate, we made it through his direct by Luttrull. And remember, it ended with the question about the time of death and asking him if he had determined a time of death. And he said, it's like with any kind of precision, no, I didn't. And he said, with the condition of the bodies as they were, it's consistent with them having died 40 to 41 hours before the autopsy. As you'll, and I know the press was running out there and like posting that and reporting on that as if that was like some in stone time of death. And I'm here to tell you that is not an in stone time of death, not in any way, shape, or form. Okay. So Rozzi then conducts the cross examination. He starts by asking the doctor whether or not he recalls taking a deposition with them. And this year, that deposition took place. And he says, yes, I do. And he said that, you were under oath, correct? He says, yes, I was. And you also waived signature of the transcripts, correct? Because typically in a deposition, you have the option of being able to review the transcript and then signing off to check and see if it's accurate, see if there's anything that you want corrected, if there's any typos, things that you're convinced that you didn't say. Because remember, I mean, you do have old school, typically stenographers in there with the machine. Depending on who you're hiring these days, some of them have the recorders and they're listening and then transcribing it, but some of them still use the old machines, those 3-button weird machines. I don't even know how that work. And so he says, yeah, I waive signature. And then the first question he asks him in direct rebuttal of the last thing he said to Luttrull was, and he says, we're going to talk about Abby first. And he says, you don't know when she died, do you? And he says, no, I don't. And he was very credible. Like there was no part, like he wasn't getting defensive with Rozzi. He's a clinician. Like the guy's, he's a lab guy. He's a science guy. Like he's not up there to play games. He's just up there to relay exactly what he saw during his autopsies and report back to the triers of fact, the jury. This is what I saw. These were my observations. I'm going to be honest about everything. If I opine something, I'm going to tell you if it's speculative. I'm not going to pretend things that I'm saying that I know are speculative are fact. I'm going to tell you they're speculative. And he did that throughout the course of his testimony, which I always respect. I mean, yes, technically he's an employee of the state, but I didn't get any sense from him uh, that he was a hired gun, except for maybe the issue with the box cutter. Because if you don't know anything about the box cutter kind of reared its head in this case recently, where it came out that somebody had said that as part of his employment at CVS that Alan is always supplied with box cutters. So what I know about box cutters, and I use them all the time. I use them to open boxes, and it's a razor blade. If you've ever used a box cutter, it's a very thin razor blade. When we get to, we'll get to that. I have long thoughts on a lot of the whole box cutter theory, and that's exactly what it is, and nothing more. So he said that there was a quote from one of his, and I think that it was his deposition where the good doctor, Dr. Kohr, had said, in terms of time of death, that she died sometime between the last time that she was seen and when she was discovered. And that sums it up. I mean, we could pretty much end the cross right here in terms of time of death, because that's it. I mean, he's unequivocally saying, I don't know when she died. It was sometime between the last time that she was seen by somebody and when she was discovered. I mean, that's as honest of an answer as you can get. All right, so and Rozzie's cross was not lengthy. Like, I mean, Rozzi is very efficient. He's very economical with his cross examinations. That's why I find him to be very effective. He's very strong on cross examination. I like his style a lot. I think that both of them are very good on cross. I thought Mcleland, I actually like his style on direct a lot too. He like Mcleland, and when we get to Chris Cecil, who was the last witness of the day, the digital forensic guy. First of all, Nick booms. When he speaks in that courtroom, you hear him. There's no craning. Nick always keeps his voice up. And what he does, his approach is explain it to he takes the explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old approach, which I love. Because he's doing that. He'll act like he doesn't understand it, but he's really doing it for the benefit of the jury. It's a really nice move because you're not making the jury feel like you're saying that they're stupid and that you need to break this down like they're children. He's putting it on him. He's saying, "Look, I don't understand a cell phone. I know how to text and take a picture, and so you got to really break this down for me so that I get it." And that's always his habit, and I think it's an effective way to really make sure that things are broken down into a way that the jury is going to understand clearly what they're talking about, especially if it's complex in nature in terms of, especially when you get into tech type stuff. So I actually enjoy Nick's directs. I think he does a good job with them. So Rozzi then gets into uh, the fact he's still hanging around in the time of death issue. And he says, You've seen the photographs, obviously. You saw the photographs from the scene, I assume." He says, "Yes, I have. And from those photos, they didn't help you in any way, shape, or form determine a time of death, did they?" And he says, "No, they didn't." So then he gets into the sharp force injury, and he's talking about a sharp edge, that he could not draw conclusions as to the type of weapon. So Rozzi gets that out early. So he's already testified that, he kind of had this epiphany, and I'm talking about Dr. Kohr, when he was in his shop and, he saw a box cutter. He's like, that handle on the box cutter kind of looks like those strange abrasions that are above this gaping wound on the right side of her neck. Or maybe it's the left side. I think it was the left side. Um, and he says, maybe that's what it is. And then like my mind, I'm sitting there in the courtroom and my mind starts racing. It's like I'm sitting here like trying to take very diligent notes. I'm trying to make as many observations of what's going on with the witness, what's going on with the lawyer, what's going on with the jury. And while I'm trying to take notes, because I kind of like with Vinny the other night, I was on 2 nights ago. I was like, I mean, you guys don't want to hear all these details. He's like, we do. He's like, this thing is not being, broadcast to the world. He's like, we're relying on you guys in there. And I'm like, well, yeah, that kind of, yeah. So I feel an obligation to you guys. I really do, and it's, I know, and I feel so happy that Andrea and Lee are there too, because I know between the three of us that we're not going to miss anything. And all three of us are defense attorneys, and all three of us are fact oriented, and all three of us, while we may have our defense slant, like I'm always going to be objective about anything. When there's bad evidence for either side, I'm going to point it out. I mean, that's what I'm here for. Like, I'm not cheerleading for anybody in this case. I mean, the only thing that I'm cheerleading for as an eventuality is that the girls and their families get justice, and that's unequivocal. I just like whether or not that's going to happen in this trial remains unknown, because where this trial is on day 5, the state has a long way to go, in my opinion, to convince that jury, because we just have not seen any kind of smoking gun evidence, anything that puts Richard Allen as the murderer of Abby and Libby. So, and I mean, that's where we're at in my mind. Now, I could go talk to somebody on the, behind me or next to me, and they could be like, man, they're putting on a hell of a case. This guy's screwed. I mean, everything is to our own perception, you know, and it's like I always say, it's like I'm never not going to be a defense attorney. My brain operates like that. I'm always going to look at things, but I'm hyper conscious of that. I'm aware of the fact that I am a defense attorney and I look through things through a defense lens. I can't undo that part of my psyche. That's never going to go away. It's what I did for a very, very long time. And I was pretty good at it, So I just look at things that way. I analyze things that way. I always analyze them from the perspective of what I did for a living. Notwithstanding that, when I'm sitting behind the bar, the wall that separates the well of the courtroom from the gallery, I'm able to look at this thing objectively, you know, is and it's interesting. It's really interesting to be at a trial. This is the first time I've gone. I'll attend an entire trial where I'm not trying the case. Completely different experience. Completely different. It's wild. I actually really enjoy it. I really do. All right, so again, they're talking about the sharp force injury. This is a very important point that Rozzi got out. He's talking about with sharp edges, with sharp edge injuries. In this particular case, he cannot draw a conclusion as to the type of weapon used. That's very important. It rebuts the concept of that he's saying that it was a box cutter. It enhances the fact that that is merely a thought that popped into his head. Okay, like this, he's not saying that wound was caused by a box cutter. And frankly, when he's talking about the wound itself, he has no idea what's caused the large incisions, the incisor wounds. He's talking about these strange, this five kind of like they almost look like indentations. I don't even know that they're abrasions. And when I was sitting there thinking to myself as this testimony was going on, I'm like, look, I'm like, how are you holding a box cutter? And if you've ever used a box cutter, they're small, they really do. They fit in the palm of your hand. It's got the tip of the razor blade looks like this and it pokes out. I'm sure most of you have seen a box cutter before, and you can slide the blade out a little more or retract it, but you have to hold on to the thing. You're holding it in your hand. I don't ever see how you're would like it would have to be that the box cutter was getting pressed for some reason on the neck because otherwise you've released the box cutter. Like I was trying to figure out the mechanics of how a box cutter would have left those marks on her neck. Um, so he says, a pocket knife to a kitchen knife, those are considered sharp edge. He said, there's short bladed, long bladed. It could be any of those things. And then he says that he could not determine the handedness from the injuries. Significant. So all of you that are wondering if he was able to pick, he's able to give an educated guess as to what hand it was. He didn't. He can't. Now he thought that Abby's one wound that she sustained, he thought that it went right to left. But again, he's like, that doesn't help me determine handedness because I don't know what the position of the killer was. I don't know if the killer was behind the girls. I don't know if the killer was in front. I don't know what hand the killer's using. So he's like, that's not something that I can tell you. He said that death here would not have been instantaneous. Okay. And he said that it could have gone anywhere. The girls could have lived depending if they're, if like, especially Abby with one wound, she could have slowed the loss of blood, if she's got her hand around her neck on the wound, which, the doctor said you're instinctual when he's talking about the autopsy. That's why he always looks at the hands, obviously. He's like, even in gunshot cases, that oftentimes I'll find bullet wounds in hands because our instinct when somebody's trying to harm us is to put your hands up to protect yourself, So that's why oftentimes in, um, murders that involve sharp force objects, you're going to see defensive wounds on the hands because the person's trying to fight off the knife. And you have only your hands to use unless you have something that you can pick up to try to block. So, but this becomes a significant point. This fact that the girls aren't dying instantly, that there's this period of time that they're still alive, that they're bleeding out, and depending on what they're able to do in terms of stopping the flow of blood, really is a big determining factor in how long before the girls fell unconscious. So, Rozzi asked him, it's fair to conclude um, that it's fair to conclude that they may have had the ability to run around, to scream during this 4 to 10 minutes that they lived, and that Rozzi then asks the question. He's like, and I just wanted to be clear that the trachea was not damaged, the windpipe, and that the girls were still breathing, which means that there was no obstruction in their mouth. They had the ability to be able to scream, which has always been a thing that's bothered me about this case. And I know that Allison and I have talked about the concept of, these trails back there. And with the next time I go out, and I'm hoping to get out there with our benefactor, um, and he's got a drone like that. Apparently, he operates, and we're gonna try to go out there. We're gonna try to get some drone footage. But what I really want to do is I want to catch a little critter walking around somewhere, maybe like when I was on the high bridge. Like I said, I heard something small rustling around in the leaves, and I thought it was like a deer. It was, and I'm talking, I was like 30 feet away from it, if not more, 40 feet. I couldn't even tell where in the woods it was coming from. Point being, it's very quiet. Sound carries, this concept that like there were still people in the area if this happened at the time that the state is alleging that it happened. I had a similar circumstance in the Garcia case, which I know I talk about all the time, blah, 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 whatever. But, there we had an offender that allegedly, according to the state's timeline, which we bought the timeline in that, we didn't think the girls were killed anywhere near the time they did. And we based that on science in terms of rigor mortis. But one of the other factors is this happened in a bedroom neighborhood on a Sunday, on a Mother's Day, on a beautiful day. Like first nice day of the spring, everybody's out, and the intruder shoots 4 6-hour 9mm rounds from outside of the house inside on a Sunday afternoon. They're saying at like 4:30 on Mother's Day when everybody's going to be out grilling, and no one hears a gun. No one. We canvassed the whole neighborhood. I'd say 80% of the neighborhood was home. A bunch of them were outside gardening, guy mowing the lawn. I'm like, lawn mowing guy might not hurt something. The cop who lived right next door who says, well, my wife had her oxygen running. I'm like, well, let me ask you this. If somebody was driving by the front of your house and your wife had her tank on and their car backfired, would you hear that? He's like, oh, yeah. I'm like, okay. So you'd hear a gunshot. So it's kind of the same concept. It's like if it's one perpetrator and it doesn't appear that there was anything used to stifle their ability to scream, why doesn't anybody hear any screaming? Why doesn't anybody hear this rustling? This isn't that deep into the woods. That's really why I want to get you the drone. I want to get you the drone footage. I really want you guys to be able to picture in your mind. That's why I went out. I had been out there and it was years ago. This time I went out with a tour guide. I'm like, bring me to all the spots, bring me to all the things that I'm going to be hearing about during the trial. I want to have an actual working knowledge of the crime scene. I want to have a working knowledge of the bridge. I want to know all of it. And I think it's very helpful. I think it's very helpful. All right. So Rosie asked those questions. The trachea was not damaged. That's correct. It was not damaged. The girls were still breathing. They could have cried. They could have screamed. Um, and then Rosie just cements it and says, look, that the ligature that you say that you see, like from here to here, it looked like beneath the mouth, did not obstruct the mouth. And he says that I think that's correct. He said, I'm speculating a bit, but um, it's even more speculation for me to say that the mouth could have been covered. I saw no indication that it was covered. So he then asks, he says, again, I just want to clarify that there was no evidence of sexual activity, no abuse, no trauma. Correct. I didn't see anything. And again, he shifts over from Abby to Libby. Says again, you could not determine the handedness from the wounds. Correct, and that's correct. And then he gets into the serrated marks. And the serrated marks, he says, he harkens back to the deposition. He says, didn't you tell me at the deposition that the serrated area, that it could have been caused by the knife handle back at your dep? And then he says, yeah, that's correct. And didn't you also say that it could have been caused by 2 or 3 or even 4 weapons? He says, yeah, I opined that that's possible. That could have been what caused those strange marks. And then he gets into the angle of force and the instrument. And then again, he says, it's impossible for me to know what causes these in terms of the type of weapon. I can't know. And then Rosie just keeps hammering home the point that it could have been multiple weapons, which of course plays into the concept that there's more than one perpetrator, right? That's why he keeps trying to drive that home point, or that point home. He then talks about Libby having cerebral edema, and he says as to Libby that her death also was not instantaneous. That her time of death that he estimates, and that's all he can do is estimate because there's a lot of variables. That it was somewhere between 3 and 10 minutes, maybe even up to 20 minutes. He said before she died. But he said the X factor is the fact that she had three major wounds, and 2 of the arteries were not completely severed, but they had substantial injury, and the vein was cut. So at this point, he then talks about the projection of blood, with these types of wounds. And again, this stuff is very graphic, you guys. If this kind of stuff is too much for you, if it triggers you, pause it. I'm pretty close to being done with the forensic pathologist. I'm very close, and then we're moving on to phone guy for the state. And then he also said that based on the fact that Libby had this dirt on her heel and some blood on her heel, as well as on her the back of her calf, that he believed that she was drugged or she was moved from one location to another. And he said that's correct. He then got into kind of I thought it was a bit of a nothing burger. It was like talking about with the girls. He's like, did I see that the girls were transported in white sheets? And he said, yeah, yeah, I think so, if I remember. And then Rosie kind of get into, well, that's not typically what they're like. Where did those white sheets come from? That's not what I typically, when I see autopsy photographs and, you know, the girls being transported in, I don't typically see white sheets. And doctor said, I honestly don't know. And, and Rosie's saying, well, I'm concerned about potential contamination. He's like, I don't know where it came from. It could have come from, did it come from the ambulance? Did these sheets come from the ambulance, from like the gurneys? And the doctor's like, I honestly don't know. I have no way of knowing where they came from if I'm being straightforward. So then Rosie goes back into the serrated marks, and he once again refers him back to his deposition, which was taken on 2/27 of this year, 24. Um, and Rozzi asks him, he's like, is it fair to say that after our deposition that left you with an unsettled mind as to what could have caused those marks? And the doctor's like, I think that's fair to say. I think, it got me thinking. I was thinking a lot. I've thought a lot over the past years about what may have caused those strange marks. I've put thought into it. It's like something that I think about. And he said that he continued to think about it because they are not what he would consider to be a classic serrated injury, like where you have like a serrated knife, like a steak knife that would leave like serrated wounds. You can see the wound pattern, the serrated things. These aren't that. Remember, these are not incisions. They're not wounds that are breaking the skin necessarily. They look more like abrasions. They kind of look like when your dog scratches you, doesn't break skin, and you know how the skin rises up, it swells. It's a lot what they look like to me. So what may have caused that? It's hard to know. I mean, no one opined that maybe it was one of these branches or sticks. Maybe that was on there. It scraped it. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to know. That's kind of the point of this thing. It's hard to know what caused that. Um, so he did not, and then Rozzi sets it straight and says, "You did not have an opinion during the deposition as to what may have caused those serrations." And again, this is as late as 2/27 of 24 when they depose him. He's not opining anything. He has no opinion whatsoever as to what could have caused him. He's befuddled by it. So Rosie then asks him, "Well, did you talk to the prosecution?" He says, "Yeah." "How often?" He says, "On several occasions." And then he asks him, "So let me ask you this. So how many times in your career have you changed your mind in terms of something like this and before the case goes to court?" And he's like, "Well," he's like, "there's a couple of times." It's like, he's like, maybe a couple of times." He's like, "But like, this is like, I'm not saying this is definitive." Like that's it. Because Rosie starts asking him, Wouldn't it have been your best practice to prepare a report? Because you, like, after you came up with this concept of a box cutter, you didn't prepare a supplemental report and send it to us, right? Like it would, you would know that would be important for us to know that you've changed your opinion." And he was very clear to say, "Well, it's not my opinion. It's 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 a theory that I have, and it's nothing more. If this was a finding that I made, then I would have done a supplemental report. But it's not that. So I didn't. I didn't think it was necessary. It was just something that I kind of threw out there as maybe this is a possibility. It's certainly not anything that I am sitting in front of this jury and saying that I think is factual, that I'm saying that I believe that these wounds were caused by a box cutter. I'm not saying that." So um and then he asks him, Rosie kind of sums up the cross. He says, like, despite whether or not you wrote us a report and whether or not it's a good idea that you should have done that, even if it is speculative, I mean, the bottom line is that this is speculation and nothing more, right? The doctor says, yes, it's speculation. All right. And so that basically wrapped up Rosie's cross. And that was it for the ME. And then it was lunchtime. So we had a nice long lunch. about an hour 20. I think the people are getting out of the line now. I think they're able to get down there and eat lunch, I believe. 'Cause the courtroom's far less crowded these days. Like, I mean, there's still a very nice crowd in there in terms of seats being occupied, but it's not as crazy as it was in terms of the um, in terms of the early days. Yeah, no stomach contents. No stomach contents. It just blew my mind. Like I kept thinking, I'm like, is Rosie gonna wait to ask? Because nothing on direct about stomach contents. I'm like, I have never ever heard a forensic pathologist testifying about an autopsy and not discuss what was in the stomach contents, even if it's irrelevant. Like even if it doesn't play into anything. Like I've always heard them describe what was found in the stomach contents. Nothing, not a peep, including from the defense. I just, I mean, you guys have heard me talking about the stomach contents. I'm like, it's such a good clue. It's certainly not definitive, but it's such a good clue. And then I was so excited when we had Derek German confirm that he had made the girls banana pancakes. Banana pancakes, the banana is very slow to digest. It's easy on the system. So it hangs around in there for a while. We heard no tox reported either. Nothing. No toxicology. No stomach contents. It was a surprisingly brief examination of the forensic pathologist, in my opinion. When he got on the stand, I thought, all right, we're gonna have a day of the doctor. Exactly, it does. I've been saying that. That would have been so where we're at right now in terms of what the state's case in chief is, in terms of what I keep harping on, which is the attack on the timeline, the attack on the state's theory as to the time of death, is they've provided no evidence as to when the girls died. They're completely relying on the phone usage and when it stopped. And they're trying to use these four witnesses who claim that they saw this bridge guy. And I'm not even so convinced after I saw the video that the bridge guy is the guy. I know everyone like I just like I was on Vinny tonight and maybe I just didn't see it. Maybe like Barb talked about so and I don't know how detailed I got into the video that we saw. And I know I told you guys that we only saw it once on direct of the witness who laid the foundation to get the video in, Libby's Snapchat video, right? So that he shows it one time, and I'm sitting there like, oh my God, like I can't believe we're finally seeing the video. And I see it, and then it's over, like the blink of an eye. I'm like, my God, was that 43 seconds? Didn't seem like 43 seconds to me. And I'm like, I didn't see the guy, but I'm like, I didn't even know what to focus on because I had never seen the whole video. It's like we've always been shown this clip, this short clip with the guy walking a couple of steps. And we have no idea. I always assumed because it's so blurry that was somebody off in the background, but we had no idea. We had no idea how far behind Abby he was. I had no idea. None of us had any idea what the rest of the video looked like. I didn't know necessarily that it was from Libby's point of view. I mean, obviously I knew she was taking the video. I didn't know that Abby was still out there on the bridge, that she being Libby had already gotten off the bridge and that she was filming Abby as she was coming back, because at some point the camera she's pointing and then it goes down. And then she says a couple things. She's like, "Oh, this is the gravel." And then she's like, she puts it back up real quick. And I only saw Abby like kind of running as she was getting towards the end of the bridge. I did not get the sense that she was running in fear. I thought she was running because she had just cleared that very, very scary thing to do, which hey, babe, that every single witness has testified that crossing that bridge is a harrowing experience. I mean, Kelsey, her own sister, testified the last time I was on it, I crawled back on my hands and my knees because I was scared as hell. Adults don't do it. This is a very kid thing. So it's like it's kind of that thing where when you're getting to the very end of something really scary you do, you run and finish it out. Like, woo, I did it. Like that was the sense that I got. So tonight on Vinny, Barb says that when she flashed the camera back up and caught this little image of Abby real close to her, that she saw the bridge guy again. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I didn't see that. And if that were true, why weren't they taking that image and trying to enhance that image? I don't know. Like Barb's seen the thing a bunch of times. So I like to me, I'm so like I wish that we would have seen it 50 times. It's upsetting to me. And from what I understand, and if there's anybody out there, and I'm gonna ask Andrea and I'm gonna ask Lee tomorrow if they heard the same thing. I think I already asked this, that Gall said that when they're back in deliberations, where they were talking about kind of housekeeping issues in terms of AV stuff, when the jury has a request to see a piece of evidence, that because Gall was like, you can't, like, telling the defense, you can't just give a flash drive to my bailiff when they have, so that has a bunch of evidence on it, because it may have stuff that's inadmissible and or that wasn't shown at trial and he could accidentally put it on. He's like, you're going to have like a separate device for every single piece of evidence that is video in nature or is something they're going to have to use a device to see it. And they were like, well, like Rosie's like, I could put them in files on a flash drive, clearly marked. And she's like, because what I'm envisioning is that when they want to see something, that we're going to come out and we're going to play it one time, and that's it. I'm like, what? I'm like, what? I just I didn't like that. To me, the jury should be able to watch the video 1 million times if they want to watch the video 1 million times. I want to see the video 1 million times. That's how many times I want to see it. There's a guy's life on the line. I want to see the whole goddamn thing as many times as I want to see it. I want to try to see everything that I can about that video. Because if Barb's right, I felt like I wanted to text her, except I had to come right back on. I was gonna be like, what are you talking about? You saw him again. Like, why didn't they use that image? Why are they using with him off in the distance and trying to enhance that if they have an image of him right, like, closer to Libby, like when he's right behind? Like, that doesn't make any goddamn sense to me. So I don't know. I don't know. Um, all right, so we get to witness three, the final witness of the day, who's Christopher Cecil. He is a first sergeant with the Indiana State Police, 20 years on the job, and uh, his official job title right now is he's the commander of the internet crimes against children. Um, you know, Mcleland asked him, he's all right. So you're training, you've trained, you've taken courses from multiple different vendors, Cellebrite, Magnet, which are software. At this point, Cellebrite used to be the vehicle in which they would use to extract, but I think they've kind of more shifted into uh, the software game, meaning that there's other products out there now that are may extract more information than Cellebrite could back in the day when it was extracting. That was the method one extraction, was like a Cellebrite, and that's simply where you take the phone that you have the information you're trying to get, plug it in, you plug that into the machine, or it's connected to the machine, and then there's another cord that leads out to a dummy phone that's been wiped, and it basically takes all the information from the evidence phone, funnels it through the machine, and then runs it into the dummy phone. And so now they're using a product called Gray Key. And then so what Gray Key does is it pulls it out, extracts it, does a much more thorough extraction. And then what they use is multiple different software suites out there, such as Cellebrite, such as magnet, and those take the information from the extraction, it extrapolates it out, and it creates a very voluminous report. From that report, you're going to have a cop that's typically going to go in and decipher it, pick out what's relevant, at least in their mind, and then they create a report that they hand off to the detectives and the investigating officers. All right, so that's how the thing works. So, and Cecil, because we heard from the first cop who did the first extractions, and that was Brian Bunner. Okay, so he did that up until 2019 because Bunner was moved. Cecil took the position. He became the forensic, digital forensic guy. So in 2019, he gets all of Bunner's work from the 3 extractions that we know took place. Okay. And in 2019, he's using gray key. Okay, and that's what he's using to do his extractions, and that's what he uses to get the info from the phone. And as I said, I really like the way that Nick does his directs, because he really does make it clear, and he's not reading off a piece of paper. He may look, but he knows his questions, and he knows what he wants to try to get out of these witnesses. And he, if he gives kind of a clunky question, he'll be like, that was a terrible question, let me re-ask it. So like, he's got a good style in there. I'm going to be curious to see him on cross, because that's where you make your hay in the litigator business, is on cross examination. Got to see how quick a lawyer can think on their feet, especially if you get answers that you don't anticipate. So he then takes the encrypted data, but Gray King's really good. They shifted over that because it was good at getting encrypted data and unlocked, and also data from unlocked Apple devices. That's why there was kind of a big trend moving towards Gray Key. But when it comes out, it's readable, but it's not processed, is what he said. So when the extracted data comes out, it's readable, it's not processed. So at that point, he then will he starts talking about the different types of extraction. He says there's a full file system extraction, and that will extract the full contents of the phone. You can extract system data, metadata, files, deleted files. And this all comes into raw detailed data form. And at that point, they ingest it either into Cellubrite or into Magnet. And then that turns it into a digestible form for humans to be able to read. Now, there's still very lengthy reports. It'll pump it out. So then he'll go in, as his role as the digital forensic guy, and he'll pare it down. He'll pare it down to the things that he thinks are relevant as to the case. If it's timeline issues, if it's, was the battery dead? When did the battery die? All those types of things. Are there photographs involved? All the things that seem to be at issue in the case, those are the things that he'll focus on. So once it's ingested into Cellubrite or Magnet, and he says he uses all of them. He says, like, this isn't I'm picking either or. He says, I use every program available to see exactly what I can glean out of this information, because one thing may pick something up that the other doesn't. And he says that's often the case, and it's device specific. He's like, Apple and Droids are very different. Apple's super secretive about their shit. Apple does not advertise. This is all the stuff we have tucked away in there. Why? Because they think it's none of our damn business. So they don't do it. These guys all have to figure it out. And we'll get to that when we start talking about some of the things that existed in these cell phones that even the guys who were doing forensic examinations of phones didn't know existed. So he says at that point, he then generates a report. So he goes in. So no, I take that back. He says that, so if he runs it through Cellubrite or Magnet, a report is generated, and or he can examine it or analyze the data, or he can just say, here you go. Here's the report. he feels that his job is to take that voluminous report and shrink it down so that it's manageable, so it contains only pertinent information. So he ends up doing his first extraction on 6/26 of 2019. Now remember, there had already been three extractions at this point. Bunner had done two, and then Homeland Security or Customs had did the third one. The feds had come in, and so they did it then. So at that point, he says once it's ingested into Cellubrite, I took a look at it, and then I put in the parameters. I was looking specifically at 21317. I made a note. I'm like, why would you narrow why would you have it so narrow of a time frame? Like, don't we want to kind of see if somebody was trying to draw the girls out to the bridge? Doesn't it matter? Isn't it relevant what may have happened in the days or weeks leading up to the date? Isn't it worth looking at? I think it is. I think it has value. He didn't. He kept the parameters on 21317, and he's trying to establish a timeline for the investigators based on the data in that phone. So then they enter exhibit number 225 into evidence, and that's Cecil's first extraction report. And, and then so Nick throws it up on the big screen. We can see it for the most part. I couldn't read everything. Kind of a bummer. I couldn't read like every word of it. I think people with better vision probably were able to read it. But he kind of goes through the things that are pertinent. So he says, with the forensic acquisition of data, that he's trying to get it from the phone and the SIM card. He's able to get user account information. He found that at least two people were using the phone. And then he said, as far as the user account goes, that he attributed it to two girls, Abby and Libby, were both using it. As far as biometric data, meaning the Touch ID, now this is a 6S. So that was back when you had the home key on the iPhone and you could use your fingerprint or your thumbprint in order to gain entry to the phone. So he said that there were three biometric fingerprints that were stored in there. The right and the left of Abby, or the right and the left of Libby, and then Abby's. He said that the Apple Health application was intact, and that aggregates data from other devices as well as the phone itself. So it'll aggregate data if you've got an Apple Watch, if you've got an iPad, anything that you're using that's Apple, it will aggregate all that and pump it out in the app in terms of your biometrics. And he says that as far as Apple Health application, that it's always keeping track when you're walking, you're running, going upstairs. My watch, if I'm wearing it, it knows when I'm sleeping, it knows when I'm awake. So I better be good, for goodness sake. But he says it's always working in the background, provided the phone's on. Phone has to be on. Okay. So, but it's always working in the background. The app doesn't have to be open. It's always keeping track, which I know to be true. I'm an Apple guy. I have an Apple Watch. I have an Apple phone. Like, even if I forget to start an outdoor walk when I'm with the dog, I can always look and open up my steps, and it'll show me how many times, or how many steps I've taken in a certain period of time. So then he says, on 213 of 17 at 1408:48, that he was looking at steps that were taken. So he said at 1331:40, which is 131:40, that steps were taken. Now, he said that there were 1,682 steps that were taken between 131:40 and 208:48. Okay, so that's 1,682 steps. He then says at 208 that there were 438 steps taken, and that stopped at 225. And then he says that there were flights climbed at 2:31:39. There was an elevation change, and that in terms of flights, it appeared that there had been two floors. So at that point, I believe that Mcleland asked him, "Oh, well, what does a flight equal? Like how many feet is that?" And dude's like, "I don't know." It's like, he's like, "Well, you tried to calculate that, right?" He's like, I think so. Like, I'm not trying to pick on Cecil. I'm really not, because I don't want to come across as like some kind of like deep. This is my everyday voice, Afton. This isn't a podcast voice. This is how I talk. But thank you. Um, I got the same sense from this guy the first time I saw him testify in the summer. He just ain't that guy. He just ain't that guy. Like, he's not that dude that you're running up to the stand and you're like, this is our guy. This guy's gonna carry the day. He's not that dude. Seems like a nice enough guy. He really does. He seems like a real kind of like computer nerdy guy. I think he takes his job very, very seriously. But just in terms of being like like having a wealth of knowledge, he ain't it. He ain't it. Um, so so there we go. We've got some steps that are taken that seem to coincide with what the state had said in terms of, getting dropped off, walking the trail, getting to the bridge, crossing the bridge, another 438 steps, stopping at 225. At 231, there's an elevation change. And then, so that would mean that, that's when they went down. That's when they went down the hill in the state's world. And it seems like that's what happened. They went down. So he says at 2:32:39, the phone stopped moving. Okay. And he said that from what he was able to see, that the app was always off. That the Apple Health app was off, but it was still keeping track. Now he says, and he just said that in general, that that the data is always being collected whether the app's open or not. And then they get into the conversation, and Nick starts probing. He's trying to get ahead of this concept that the defense has, that that the phone, that the girls were taken away from the crime scene and they were returned later at 4:30 a.m. And so he's sitting there, and so they get into the whole car. Like, well, okay, well, what happens when you bring your phone in the car? He's like, well, what happens if he says, well, first, what happens if you're sitting still? Will it record steps? No. He's like, well, what happens if you're in the car? He says, it could. And Nick says, well, it could. Well, how could it? And he says, well, like, we've heard in my research that, sometimes if you go over a bump, like a speed bump, that'll fool the phone into thinking that you've taken a step. He's like, so the car has to be moving, but the phone doesn't. And he's like, I think so. Like he just didn't know anything definitively, and I'm not even necessarily putting it on him because I don't know that anybody knows it definitively. What I'm learning about iPhones is that all these experts in all these trials don't know shit. Like that whole thing with what went on in the Karen Reed thing about the whole house long to die in the cold, whether or not it happened at 2:31. I did not get a definitive answer, and I don't give a shit what anybody else is saying out there. I don't give a shit what any of them are saying. I listened to it. No one was definitive. I don't care what side you're on in that case. If you're saying that somebody gave a definitive answer in that case, you're full of shit. Because no one gave a definitive answer. So, and this guy's like, as far as like why Apple phones, iPhones occasionally track driving as walking, I don't know. No one knows. They're doing studies on it. They're all still trying to figure it out. And that's factual. Like, I've sat there in my car after walking my dog, like, at an off-leash place. I'll forget to turn off the steps, and, like, I'll have looked at it close to when, like, I'm wrapping up the walk, and then I'll drive whatever it is, the mile back to our crib, and I'll look at it, and the thing, like, for some reason, kept track of the drive. It added a whole shit ton of steps, and I'm like, and my phone's always sitting, like, on my armrest or in a, like, cup holder. Allie would say it's always in my hand and I'm texting, which is probably there's some probably truth to that. But what I'm not doing is walking. So, just in terms of the data and how Apple actually functions, I'm just not confident that anyone really knows how it works. I don't care who they are, unless they are the person that developed the technology for Apple. I don't think they know, because they're all guessing. It's like they literally developed all of this software and all of these devices to pull shit off of Apple because Apple is not telling anybody a goddamn thing about how their shit operates. They're not trying to give away the secret sauce. They're not doing it. So, like, there are companies that exist in the world and are making billions of dollars because they've created that their only job, the only thing that they're trying to do is figure out ways to crack into Apple and try to figure their shit out. And it's mostly for law enforcement. All right, so then we get into this really interesting concept of the knowledge C database. And y'all, I see your questions. I will not leave you hanging. I promise. I promise. I promise. I promise. All right. So just keep asking them. They'll keep starring them. My mods are really good about that. I hope Osbrook's back in here. Like, I found that, like, I Osbrook, like, tweeted me. He's like, "Oh," tweeted at me. He's like, "Oh, I'm great. Great. I got kicked off of Bob's Live after I was complimenting about, like, getting factual shit from it, And I'm like, I didn't do it. Like, my mods did it. Like, but Michael has had a lot of imposters in our chat, so I think that the mods just thought he was an imposter. I don't know, but he's good to go. So hopefully he's still here or came back. He might be salty though. Salty Bob. All right, so we get to this knowledge C database, and the knowledge C database was talked about when Bunner was on the stand. We talked about that with him a little bit. It's very interesting. It's been in there for a long time. This is like the deep in the phone. This is like the way in. This is like the super secret shit in the phone that, like, people didn't even know existed until like 2016. Like, Apple had it tucked in there and they're like, fuck y'all. You don't need to know our business because we got the knowledge C database, suckers. This is where, and it, like, and Apple is more into our personal private shit than anyone. It's like I have a real love-hate relationship with Apple, but they are trying to cull information from us constantly, every day. Every way they can intrude into our beings, they do it, and they're wanting to do it on the DL, which means on the down low. So they're not telling people. So the entire digital forensic world, all these supposed experts, had no idea that the knowledge C database even existed. That's when Auger was asking the other day. She's like, well, just because you didn't know it existed doesn't mean that it didn't exist. And he's like, right, it did exist. He's like, but his counter to that was like, yeah, okay. Well, even when we found out it existed, we still couldn't get into it because we didn't have the technology to get to it. So that comes later. That comes later. So prior to Gray Key, Cellubrite was, like I was saying earlier, Cellubrite was the tool that they used to actually do the physical extractions of data. Like on Allie and I were dealing back in the Garcia case, they had done the extraction in 2013. That's early stages. That was the first. I think that was the first case. I don't know if Allie had dealt with Sully Bright prior to Garcia. I don't know that I had. So that was the first time I was like, oh damn, they're getting all the deleted shit. That's when I started telling all my clients, I'm like, look, any of that shit you think that you've deleted on your phone, I got news for you, Chief. That shit's still there. The only way you're getting rid of it is just destroying. You better nuke that phone in the microwave, bro. Because otherwise they're gonna get you. Gonna find all your shit. It's a little tip to all you people out there that may be burgeoning criminals. Just keep that in mind. All right. So then he gets into the timeline again. And he's talking about the 13849. And he's got phone calls. He's talking about he's trying to build the timeline. He's trying to look at the phone calls. He's trying to see if the phone was plugged in and charging. He's trying to see when different apps are being used. Snapchat. He's trying to check into battery life. So he then testifies about the series of photos that Libby took and was posting to Snap. So there's this 1:44 or 1:41:44 p.m. picture that was posted to Snap. And then there's another picture at 1:43 p.m. That was posted to Snap, and it was the Libby selfie with Abby in the back seat. You've probably all seen that one before. It's one of the images that floats around on the internet. At 2:05, there's a Snap pic of just the Monon High Bridge. All right. At 2:13, okay, so at 2:05, 10 seconds, there's the Snap pic of the Monon High Bridge. At 2:13:20, there's the phone's unlocked. Libby puts her finger on the unlock, opens it with their Touch ID. At 2:13:51, 20-30 seconds later, the video is recorded. At 2:14:41, right after the video stops. Now, this I found interesting. This was new. So at 2:14:31, the video stops. At 2:14:41 seconds, someone unsuccessfully, so this is right after the video stops, someone unsuccessfully tried to use the biometrics to try to open the phone. And then my notebook ran out of paper. Sorry, guys. I'm kidding. It did, but I had extra paper. I'm burning through the notebooks, y'all. I'm going to be like the old composition book. I couldn't find any legal pads. Look at this. Look at this guy. Just chock full. Hundreds and hundreds of pages. Thousands even. That's why I was saying I can't feel my finger. All right, hold on. Let me get a drink. Doing a lot of yapping. Oh, we're an hour 13 in. See, I feel much more relaxed on this live. I was trying to cram the first live in with the whole, having to go on with Vinny. Now I'm chilling. Super chilling. I love hanging with y'all. Got a nice crowd, 801. It's a good crowd. It's a good crowd for breaking it up into two lives. I'm going to beat Andrea tomorrow. I'm going to be the first dude to get the shit out there. I'm telling you that. Andrea and Lawyer Lee are going to be following me. You guys can dip. I don't care. But I'm going to be the first one tomorrow. I'm going to run home full speed. Throw this bad boy up. Whatever time court ends, I'm out. It's like I saw the couple that I do not speak of run out of the courtroom immediately after court. I never listened to their content, but I can guarantee I know what they were just dying to put out there. I can guarantee it. Guarantee it. I could completely guess what they were like. Oh, get sold. Not quite. All right, so we continue with Chris Cecil. He's asked, do service providers, they continue to update their software, right? He's like, yeah. So he's talking about Sully Bright and Magnet. He's yes. There's constant updates. They're always updating it, and they have to do that. It's because the phone manufacturers keep updating the phones. They keep adding new features. They'll remove features. They'll do all kinds of stuff. They have to always, it's a very fluid situation. They're always having to update. And so he says, Sully Brighton Magnet, their updates are pretty frequent. And, the most recent one allowed for decoding of more data. And, it's like what he does at that point. And again, we're in 2024. So this is right before the hearings in July. And so, well, actually, it's a little bit before. So it's like May 10th, 2024. Sully Bright has a new update. He's like, whoo, hot damn. New update. So he's always trying to call more information. So he's like, all right, man, I'm going to run it through there again. You can't stop me. So when we were at the hearings in late July, and Auger had him on the stand, and boy, I have to tell you, like Auger, she likes to feed Cecil lunch every day. She's got a pretty good handle on Cecil. I like Jennifer. I think she's a good lawyer. So that extraction. So when we were sitting in court in the end of July, he's like, I'm still working on it. So he's extracted it at that point. He's used Gray Key. Well, like, he didn't even because he didn't have the phone, I don't think, at that point, or he might have. I guess apparently lawyer Lee she put it out there that that after the October extraction by Bunner back in 2017 that she heard. I didn't hear this, but I have no doubt to like I'm not going to question lawyer Lee. She's diligent. She said that she heard that the family got the phone back and that they actually recorded the funeral, some shit, on Libby's phone. I don't know. Or they recorded something like that. Doesn't make any sense. There wouldn't be a funeral in October. I don't know. But like the word on the street is that law enforcement gave the phone back to the family in October of 2017. I don't know. But if they did, it's not what Cecil used. Cecil used the prior extractions, and he just fed him back in. So he reprocessed them, the original extraction, the OG extraction, the first extraction, and then he created his new supplemental report. And remember, the first extraction done was a method 1 extraction that was old school. And so then he went back and he reviewed the timeline from Bunner's extraction. And he looked at the data that collected, and it was different. It's got more systems, there's more information. And then he said and then he acknowledged that, he's like, when you turn the phone off, you do lose data, but it also changes. And, so there's a loss of some data because it's a first in, first out situation for certain applications, meaning that if it was the first thing in, the next thing, if there's no space, it's going to override. When the new thing comes in, it's going to override the first thing that came in, which is basically at the back of the line now. So you got the new shit coming in, the last shit drops off. All right. So he takes from May 10th of 2024 to August 18th, 2024. Report's finally done. Sends it over to the defense. Here you go. My second supplemental report. So then Nick says, okay, I'm going to throw up the second supplemental report. He's got the big screen going. Throws the second supplemental report up there on that big giant monitor. He's like, all right, first, you caught some mistakes, right, in your first report. So what do you do? What did you fix? He says, yeah, there were a couple of dates that I screwed up. He said that the first was a mistake, and it was that Liberty German unlocked, that it was that her phone was unlocked by Sully Bright. He says, nah. So it was actually unlocked with the passcode. The family had given us the passcode, which we knew. We knew that from Bunner's testimony. And then he said that there was he had transposed a couple of numbers or had gotten a number wrong. It was 1032, but it was really supposed to be like 1012 on the last reported activity. So he had the number wrong, or he transposed the two numbers as to the last reported activity on the phone. And then section 3 of his new report talks about the knowledge C information, which is the new thing. And the way that he kind of describes knowledge C is like, we like to use the knowledge C stuff because it'll give you pattern of life information. Like a lot, we saw a lot of knowledge C stuff in the Murdoch trial. Like, so all those things that we saw where they were talking about what Paul's habits are in terms of when his phone's it typically if it gets down to 6%, he's plugged in within like 5 minutes. Like all of his habits with his phone habits, you can help develop like a person's pattern of life through the way that they operate their phone, through their charging habits, through, like when they'll stop doing certain things depending on battery life, like all those little things that, on the surface, you might not think, wow, you can really kind of like build a timeline from that shit. And now that we know that we have access to it, you can. But he says that the knowledge C database information is volatile. So that he says like it could be stored for weeks, could be stored for months or longer or a day. It's volatile. There is no like rhyme or reason to it. Whether or not Cecil really knows that answer, I have no idea. I tend to think he doesn't. Really know the edit. Like on Cross, there's just so much shit he doesn't know. Like he can't answer questions. Like answers to things that he should know is like being the digital forensic guy. I mean, Nick keeps rolling him up there. I mean, Nick's got to have some faith in him. I mean, at this point, the guy did the reports. They got to put him on, right? I mean, there's just like some questions that he couldn't answer. Whoever the defense's expert is, or their digital forensic expert is, I think will probably be solid. It's yet to be determined, though. All right, so his first entry is that. Oh wait, let me see. Yeah, I'm going to tell you flat out as we get longer. So this is like at 4 o'clock where I can't feel my hand. My writing gets worse. Like my writing actually during the better course of the day was pretty legible. Like I think Allie could even read it. But as the day rolls on, it gets worse and worse. So because he's all right, he's like it's that first in, it's the first in, first out type thing. When new shit comes in. So that's going to be what's deleted. He says the camera roll application, the camera roll app is in use, but not the actual pictures. So the data from your activity of using the camera app on your phone is kept, but not the actual images. And this again, we're talking about the knowledge C database, okay? And he says, and then Nick asks, do you lose knowledge C info when the phone is turned on and off? And he says, depends. He's like internet cache stuff could be lost. He's like user credit or created stuff like photos and videos, you're not going to lose that. Health app data, is that part of KC? KC is obviously the knowledge C database. He says, no, it's not. Says the health app data, once he goes through it. So then he starts getting into what he found. So he's like, did you find anything new in the Apple health data? I'm like, ooh, no health data. Like, we're going to get more. It's like, nope, didn't find anything new. It's like disappointing. He says, and then Nick tries to get in. So like, he's like, all right, I know we've talked about the steps already, but we got to talk about them again. Like, so how the hell does the iPhone calculate steps? Like, did you ever figure it out? And he's like, well, it's like kinda. It's like I looked at some research and there's some can't remember if it was Swedish or Norwegian company that's doing studies, and they're like everybody's trying to figure out how they do it. Like, what makes that shit tick? Like, how does it work? It's like, but nobody really knows. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's like I keep sitting there and I'm like, they've created this like alien technology that like there's a whole part of the world that's trying to figure out how the shit works. Isn't that weird? Like, think about that concept. There's like entire industries that are trying to figure out how these things that we're all addicted to actually work. It's wild to me. It's like, how are there people with brains so big at Apple that they're able to create a technology that you can't find some hacker who can get into anything and who is out there figuring this shit out? Like, what is happening? It's like I get lost into rabbit holes when I'm like thinking about that shit. I'm like, it's so crazy. Like, we're all like we have no idea what these phones are sucking out of us. Like, I'm pretty sure our souls are all getting sucked out by the phone. So take that for whatever it's worth. All right. So basically says like if the steps are in a controlled environment, that they're going to be pretty close to accurate. Meaning, if you're doing it like an indoor track to exercise, it's pretty accurate. If I'm walking my dog on our usual path, it's pretty accurate. Like, my steps are almost always the exact same thing if I've taken my exact route. So, but he says the longer the walk, that Apple tends to underestimate the distance. Take that for whatever it's worth. So then Nick shifts to in car. He's like, could the phone misinterpret a speed bump as a step? He says it could, yes. And then he asks, must the phone be on? He says, yes, phone has to be on. And then he says that, so he decided on this extraction where he had started on the 13th, and he started like when he did his first thing, his first extraction report, he started when the girls got dropped off at the bridge by Kelsey. On this one, instead of going all the way back, like I suggested, like a couple weeks, a month, he decides to go back to at least 11 a.m. It's like, I thought I'd do that to get some life pattern stuff. I'm like, come on, dude. I'm like, you don't want to see like if anybody was texting the girls like the days leading into this? Like, really? Really? I'm like, I'm like, come on, bro. Do some goddamn police work, man. So he says, there's no location data, no updated location data in the health app. He says other apps do give location data. So, because he had shifted to figuring out location data, and he says that the user of the phone for independent apps, and any of us iPhone users know this, that you can toggle your location data, the location data services or location services data, like on and off on various apps. Now, I know for a fact I missed one of these because he was reading through that shit so fast. I meant to hit Andrea up and be like, yo, I hate to beg you for your notes again, but could you give me a note? But the ones that I caught that Libby had her apps toggled, or her location services toggled, were the App Store, the Maps, the camera, Snapchat, the weather app, and for some reason he said never for Walmart. I was like, is it like, am I missing the significance of what did she like? Why never for Walmart? I will never, ever put my location services on for Walmart, and don't ask me to. I'm not doing it. Like, it was a strange thing that he specified. I'm sure there was a laundry list of shit that she did not have it toggled on for. I don't know why he said never for Walmart. Maybe that was like he was trying to give Walmart the business. I don't know. All right, so what that means is that when you are using that particular app that you have allowed to track your location, so when she's in Snap, her location services are on. Okay, when she's got her maps open, That's when you got to, if you want your maps to work, you got to have your location services on. She's got her camera on. It's tracking her GPS stuff. Okay. Tells her where she's at. He says that they're very accurate GPS location on these apps. Okay. That's what Cecil says. So then we shift to taking care of the issue raised by the defense with the video taken at 2:13:51, and that the defense brought up this concept that, oh, well, the longitude and latitude. Did you happen to see when she had Bunner? O'Shea had Bunner on the stand. She's like, Did you notice that the longitude and latitude for where this video was taken was actually at the high school? I thought she said Memorial Park, but today they were talking about the high school. And he's like, well, and then that was the part. Now we know where Nick got that, because like I was talking about how like Nick had gotten back on redirect and said, well, isn't it really like when you initially open the app in order to take whatever app it is, whether it's your camera or whether it's Snap, and you're taking the picture, it's giving you a much bigger geographical location. But as the video continues, it closes in on where you're actually at. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, And I mean, it tracks. I could see that being the case. But so today we got the actual answers, the actual reason why that is, which I thought was interesting. And he said that so at 2:13:55, the GPS location shifts to the trail. So we've got, I'm sorry, I wrote it. So it's still I wish they'd not use military time. Like Nick asked him not to either. Like Nick's like, dude, it's like, can you please just use regular time? He's like, I don't know how to do the military time, which Nick was in the military. He 100%. Like, this is what I'm saying. Nick's always trying to take care of that jury. Like, but he puts it on him. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a solid move. It's like, I don't get it. Like, don't do the military time shit, because I don't know what it is. It's like, I don't want to have to sit there and like work backwards from 13 all the time. It's like, I have to do. It's like, I can't remember what the trick is. I'm like, so I know 13's one. I'm sure you guys are going to pound me in the chat. Like, oh, here's a trick. Or you'll call me an idiot. But it's like, so, all right. So we've got 2:13:51 video taken. It has them located at Delphi High School. And so that's at 51, 13:51, 1:13:51. At 1:13:55, so we're talking a mere 4 seconds later, it's now got the GPS located at the trails. All right. So, and he says that it's within a 30-meter range of accuracy, that reading. So Nick asks him, like, well, how does that work? Like, why is it doing that? Like, what is the deal with that shit? And he's like, well, the reason is that the phone developers, your Apple, I mean, look, they hear us when we're saying my battery dies all the time. It's always dying too fast. Like, what's going on, dude? Make a battery that lasts longer. They hear us, and they really care about us. They really do. But they want our battery to last longer. So they'll install features that do things to preserve the battery. That makes perfect sense, right? So like they said, all right, look, like in the beginning, like if they're just opening up their camera, we don't want it connecting to satellite right away, because that takes up way more battery than just pinging off a tower. It's facts. So that's what he says. So he says, like, initially, when you open your camera or you open Snap and you've got your location services toggled on, that initially what it'll do in order to conserve battery is that it will ping off a tower just to give you a general location. Now, we know at that point in time that there was one, maybe two towers in Delphi total. So that's what it did. It pinged the tower. So when they gave back the longitude and latitude, it had it closer to the high school. But then 4 seconds later, so the phone's like, all right, dude's getting real with this video. Like, this is a keeper video. We better send it up to the big dog. So they fire it up to the satellite, which uses more battery. It eats more battery power, but it gives you accurate location because satellite's always going to beat tower, always, in terms of accuracy and location. All right, so so that explains that. So to me, like kind of that little mystery of the issue of the video, why it's showing, like clearly we're seeing it's on the bridge, right? We're clearly seeing that it's on the bridge. But what we're told is that somehow our eyes are seeing one thing and the data is telling it took place someone else or took place somewhere else. I'm like, well, what's that mean? What are we saying? Like, how could this happen? Is this bridge thing a deep fake long before deep fakes existed? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. So, so I consider that issue to be a non-issue anymore in terms of the jury's minds. I don't think that they're going to think that that's a thing. I think that that was an ample explanation for what happened there. So, he says the Snapchat app. Man, there's a lot of Snapchat talk. It's like, oh man, I wish I had Cameron, our 18-year-old, with us. I've been asking her so many fucking questions, being like, how does Snapchat work? Can you tell me how it works? Like, what? Why does it keep it from the story, but then it disappears if you're just posting it on a chat? Like, what? It's like, I don't get it. I don't know. I don't get the like watching a courtroom full of Gen X and Boomer lawyers try to understand Snapchat is one of the most glorious things that you will ever see. It's like it's just an error. It's like it's a human comedy of errors. Just like a bunch of people that have no idea how to operate Snapchat. None of them. Not Andy, not Brad, not Nick, not Diener, not Luttrull, not Gull, not me. No, no one I know in that courtroom, include I don't know, like I don't think Andrea knows how to use it. And I don't think Lee knows how to use it either. Snapchat. I don't think any of us are like if anybody does, it would be Andrea. Like she might know, but like I have no clue. And like nobody I'm like, why didn't they get somebody that knows how the hell? Oh, there's definitely jurors that know. So the younger jurors, because when we get to our jury questions, there are a shit ton of Snapchat questions, but it seems like a lot of them don't understand it either, and it's like, but it's really, we're talking about the retention of data with Snapchat, because the entire thing that drew the kids to it was the disappearing data. They love the concept that shit that they would put out to the world would vanish like a fart in the air. Like they love that. But what it does for the rest of the crime solving world is it creates a whole bunch of questions about what the hell happened to that shit. And then when you put extraction software into the mix and you're trying to pull it back, it leaves us with a bunch of questions on what can we extract back? Like if it's posted to your story, it's there for I think 24 hours before it vanishes. Like my daughter Cameron told me that you can actually like you can save a shot that you take into you can toggle that it's something that you can actively put on that the default is to get rid of the picture. And wow, I'm trying not to read this chat. Y'all are off. You guys are all off the hook tonight. So yeah, no, I've got no clue. No clue about Snapchat. But she said that if you have that setting set on your Snapchat in the settings, that you can keep a picture that will disappear for the Snapchat world, but will remain on your device. All right. So as far as Snapchat, the GPS data is something that was toggled on Libby's phone, and the latitude longitude on that is very accurate. It's within 5 meters, he says. He then gets into making comparisons about, and this is where it starts getting tasty to me. Because if anybody watches our content consistently, the one thing that I've asked to have answered in this case, the house long to die in the cold for this case for me is why in the hell that phone that was being pinged by AT&T every 15 minutes didn't ping off the tower one time in 11 or 12 hours before 4:33 a.m. when all the messages flow in. 15 SMS messages flow in. That's the answer I want. That's a game changer for me. It's a game changer for me. One way or another, it's a game changer. If there's a reasonable explanation, because this bullshit about it being in the water and drying out in 27 degree, nah, bullshit. That ain't it. I need a sciencey answer. I need an actual answer. So I come into this Chris Cecil direct examination with great hope. Great hope. You know what I mean? So, but they get into the battery power first, which is also interesting. Like we all want to know, was the battery dead? Was it alive? So back on his first extraction report, back which he testified in late July, Cecil said that at that point, when Auger put his feet to the fire, and she said, "Well, like when do you think the battery died on the phone?" He's like, "I'm not sure, but I'm going to guess 10 p.m." Something to that effect. Today he said, "I thought back in late July, early August that the phone died. The battery power ceased to operate any longer at 10 p.m." On his second extraction report, that has changed. So he says that he thinks that the battery on the phone, he prefaced it by saying it's very complex. First thing, like there's this part of me that just loves Cecil because he's just like a nerdy guy trying to go up there and like spit truth. Like he's not trying to be evasive. Like there's nothing dishonest about the guy at all. You know what I mean? It's like he's a very likable guy, like frankly. You know, and I think he's a do-gooder cop. Like Chris Cecil's not, Captain Corruption. Like he's not like this dude is like just trying to get answers like diligently. But I think that the problem for him is, and I think that he's got the mind for it. I think that the reality is, and he's still like, I think he's just finishing his master's. Like, so the guy he's trying to learn it all. He's trying to learn it all. He really is. So I give him credit for that. But I just think in terms of kind of like where he was at the time and like where he's at right at this moment, there's some gaping holes. And in a case like this, I don't think we can afford witnesses with gaping holes that are considered to be experts. That's kind of where I'm at with it. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't want to come off like I'm picking on the guy. But in a case that we all want justice for the girls, in a case where we need answers, in a case that I consider to be a true whodunit, we need definitive answers. Yeah, mods, can you post our PayPal and my Venmo? Like I keep seeing people ask. Jay has that running every 5 minutes. It's like a constant flow. Like we need that in there. If like people are willing to give, I'd like to give them the opportunity. Thank you so much. All right. Okay. So he prefaces it by saying it's very complex. The whole battery power thing on the iPhone is like secret. It's alien technology. I don't really understand it. But he says that, we all know that once you get below 20%, you'll get the message. Your phone's at 20%, suck bag. You might want to plug it in, get a charge on that thing. And then, you can either do it if you have the ability to do it or not, you know. And then at 10, we get another pops up. Hey, dude, your phone's about to die, bro. You're at 10. You want to go into low power mode at least? Okay. Boop. Um, and then we get another one at 5. And phone's like, look, man, I'm trying to tell you, dude, like your lifeline, the thing that you completely rely on is about to die. You should probably give it a little juice. And if you don't do it, well, it dies. All right. So, I mean, that's how he explains the battery. I mean, like, I think we all knew that shit. So I'm like, all right, okay. He wasn't quite as dramatic as I was. All right. So, but obviously, like, again, the Apple has, done all the things that it can to try to help our batteries last longer, right? Because they hear the complaints. So, but there's certain things like you could put on your low power setting, right? I've gotten pretty good at doing it, but shit still works. Like there's certain shit that won't work anymore. Like things in the background will shut down when you're on low power. But like if you get like Apple Pay still works. Like I could still go in and buy a bag of jerky. You can still make calls. Your camera roll or your camera still works. Your health app is still operating. If you try to open up a game, it opens up slow as shit. I see you, Michael. Welcome back, buddy. It's good to see you. That was by accident, man. Just so you know, in case you didn't see my text, you didn't answer me. All salty with me. Like you think I'm sitting here bouncing anybody, man? That's what my mods do. And my mods are my queens, so don't be talking shit about my mods. Got amazing mods. I love my mods. Keep everybody on their toes. And we let the trolls in. You know why? Because I don't give a fuck. I don't care. Like anybody who ever wants to come challenge me on anything, I got you. Come on in. Message me. I fear no one. Like I will chat it out with anybody. Maybe you'll convince me of something, somebody out there. Anybody. You know? I'm open. I'm open source, yo. I love it. That's what I live for. I live for debate. Live for it. I challenge you to a duel, sir. I see you, Holly Berry. All right, so let's get serious here. This is serious business. All right, so we've got all right, so remember, battery power back in late July, August. It was his belief that the phone died at 10 p.m. Ooh, that's bad. That's bad. No, I'm not slap happy. I'm in a pretty good mood. I think I'm being pretty funny. You think I'm slap happy, Pokey? Hmm. I'm about to put you in timeout, Poke, and I love you. All right. So, all right, look, he ends up today, his new time of death for the battery of Libby's phone is 4:33 a.m. Boop. So the phone's alive the whole time. So now, as you can imagine, what's my one question that I want answered? It's a quiz, kids. It's a quiz. I want to know how in the world that phone did not connect to a tower if it was sitting in that position for 11 plus hours. When at 4:30, the phone's not dead. Now we have the phone is alive all night. You still get messages though, Judge. I don't know. He doesn't say that. We didn't get the answer to whether it was on low power. If you have an iPhone, you have to toggle that on. You have to toggle it on. I am in a good mood tonight. It's because I ate an actual dinner. You guys know, feed Bob. I mean, Grin for me knows. That feed Bob hashtag is a real thing. So like I had a nice dinner, nice, like a real healthy, good, fresh cheese and chicken Caesar salad, man. It was fire. It was good. Oh, you guys are asking me the question. You're so brilliant. I love you guys. You're so brilliant. You're asking the same questions that I was asking. And you may be a little disappointed because I will like Teresa F. Great questions. Great question. And one that I didn't necessarily get an answer to. So you're there, like this leaves you wanting. I'm just gonna warn, I'm gonna forewarn you. I'm gonna forewarn you that this this witness is gonna leave you wanting on some things. All right, so now we've got a new time for the battery life of the phone. The battery was alive and well on Libby's phone until 4:33 a.m. per the state's witness. Okay, so they then get into and Nick asked him, "Well, how do you know that?" He's like, "Well, primarily because she received a bunch of SMS messages at 4:33." I'm like, "Wow, he really put it together. He really put it together. That's amazing. That is some expert analysis." I mean, so I'm jesting, but the reality is that he didn't glean that from the most recent extraction. He didn't glean that from the knowledge C database stuff. Like, I thought that that was the kind of shit that was in the knowledge D database is that you can get that exact information, like with like second by second blow of where your battery power is. Guess not. All right, so um he then says the text came through, and then he says, "This is an important question," he asked, and I think it's going to be challenged by the defense expert. Nick asked the question, "Was the phone turned off in between the time of the last activity on the phone and 4:30 a.m., which we believe is at 5, whatever it is, 29:39. I have so much shit in my head, I can't remember every specific number, but the last activity is like whatever, 5:37, 5:39, somewhere in that time frame. I'm sure someone in the chat knows. So, like in that period of time, he is saying that the phone was never powered down. He testifies to it. Says no, it was not turned off. So this is where my question of, well, did somebody put it in airplane mode? Now, I have questions for you, my brilliant chat, my beautiful fam, all you beautiful humans. Does somebody in the chat know who's educated? I don't want guesses. I don't want speculative shit. Does anybody know what exactly happens with airplane mode? Like, what does it shut down? Does airplane mode mean that you're no longer getting messages? Does airplane mode shut down your cellular? Like, what does it do? What does it do? Tell me in the chat. I want to know because I honestly don't know. All right. So uh he says, and so Nick says, "Well, how do you know that? How do you know?" And he says, "Well, because there was no information that the phone turned off in the papers." So he says, "There's no movement traced on the phone either. There's nothing. So I don't see any information about the phone being powered down, and I don't see any movement of the phone after the last activity. The phone stops moving." All right. So he then gets into some more timeline stuff, and he's talking about the phone stops moving at 2:33 p.m. And then he said at 2:33 p.m. the screen lit up, and he gets this from the knowledge C database. So the screen lights up, There's some FaceTime calls that come in. Some phone calls are received, and some SMS messages come through, which is so SMS is through towers. And like if you got an iPhone people can go through the cellular network. Like we don't have to go through the tower. Like you have to be on Wi-Fi, but like we don't have to ping off a tower to send a message. Like as long as we're both on Wi-Fi, as long as we have a way to connect to our cellular network, iMessages come through. They're different. They're different. They're two different things. And they connect. You receive them differently. Okay, wait. So no text or calls in or out. So is Tracy? I don't know if this is Trace or Diz. Is that so? No text or calls in or out. Doesn't connect to tower, but you can receive SMS if you're still connected via phone data. Is that airplane mode? Is that airplane mode? Oh, Law Nerd Amber. All right. I worked at Verizon. Airplane mode turned off all antennas. So expand. What's that mean? Turns off all antennas. That makes it sound like you can't get shit. Nothing comes in. That's what it sounds like. Let me know, Lon. Amber, like finish that thought out for me. All right. So we've got 2:33. Screen lights up. It's because the FaceTime calls are coming in, phone calls are coming in, SMSs are coming in. At 4:06 p.m., the phone receives an SMS from Becky Patty. And like, I don't know why they highlighted this other than the fact that he just wanted it read out. Like anybody doubted that Becky Patty would be like incredibly concerned about where her granddaughter was. It's like, but so Becky's like, you need to call me now at 4:06 p.m. All right, so last activity, as we know, is that 5 whatever time, right? For some reason, he doesn't give it during this thing. And so he says that, till the 14th, nothing comes in until 4:33 a.m. when there's a flood of messages. Now, the defense says it's 15. For some reason, Cecil just refuses to say it's the number 15. He's always like, approximately, like it was a real battle back in July between Auger and Cecil to get him to say that it was 15. It's just what he wouldn't do it. It was like this amazing battle of her trying to get him to just say it was 15 SMS message. She had to explain to him back then the difference between iMessage and SMS as to like how they, like what reads what, like what shows is what is like is it like does it show on your phone is when it's sent or is it showing when it's like and which one is it? Like she was schooling him on that shit. All right. My most updated knowledge is circa 2021. I do not know about recent capabilities. I am confident in 2016, no receive, no send in airplane mode. All right. Thank you, Amber. It's very helpful. Appreciate you. Okay. So then Nick asked the question. I'm like, oh my God. Fucking I'm adjusting my seat. I'm like, God damn it. He just asked the question. He asks, it's like, why was there a lull? What caused the 11-hour lull? I'm like, oh my God. I got my pen at the ready. I'm like, I'm taking notes, man. And it's like, I don't know. I have no answer. I'm like, no, oh my God. What? He doesn't know. He doesn't know. He has no explanation. So as we sit here today in day 5 of the Richard Allen trial, and we've got the mystery 15 SMS messages that flood in, he doesn't know why. Not only does he not know, he doesn't even have a forensic pathologist type speculative opinion like the whatever, the little thing, the blade thing, the box cutter. Like he's got nothing. He puts nothing out there. I was like, oh my God. I died a little bit inside when that happened. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, this guy. So we sit there and my heart's crushed. We have no idea. There's no real answer, which I think is a really, really big problem for the state. I just think it is. You know, if they're going to put an expert on that is going to challenge the phone being turned off or powered off, if they have somebody that's just a little bit more experienced with getting into the knowledge C database stuff, like maybe encrypted files, like the encrypted, because when we get to Auger's thing, I ain't saying shit, but I'm just saying I smell a trap that was set in her cross, and I'll tell you when we get to it. I know a trap when I see it by a defense attorney, by a good defense attorney. You know, and you know what traps are, right? I mean, traps, you wait to spring them. Like you're setting a trap for some shit to happen down the road. And I have a very strong sense of, based on this one line of questioning that she fucking locked him in on the record, asked him if he, well, we're getting close to it. All right. Okay, so okay, so then again, the 4:33 last activity, what happens is, I don't know, 3:06 p.m. Lost power. So then he's jumping ahead to like after Bonner gets the phone, like on the 15th. So he's like the next time the phone's active after 4:33, he's like, I think that's when the battery finally dies. The next time it's active is 3:06 p.m. on that day. I forgot that on the 14th, I think Becky, Patty, or Kelsey, one of the two of them brought the phone over there. And he's like, it was charged. Like Bonner charged the phone and fired it back up. And so that's it. And then let's see. So then when so Nick's like, I'm done. We have our afternoon break. He comes back. He's like, I'm just kidding. I want to clarify a few more things. A couple things I forgot to ask. Judge's like, cool, go ahead. It's like the 140710. He's like, what? Wow. Oh, he's like, what do the asterisks mean? So like, because and that's referring to his report that he had up on the screen. So he had some asterisks, and in this particular section, he said the 14, which is 20710 picture, he had an asterisk, and he means that I didn't find that pic on the device of Abby walking on the bridge alone. So this becomes like a very mysterious picture. This missing picture of Abby, which I think you guys have probably all seen it, right? It's the picture with Abby just out on the high bridge alone, just standing there, looking down, walking, right? We've all seen it. So apparently he does not find that pic on the device. Super mysterious because it exists in the world, right? I suppose somebody could have, like, you can screen grab it, right? Like if you send it out to your homies or you put it on your story and your friend's like, oh, that's a dope picture, I'm going to keep it. Boop. Maybe that's how it's out there. But it's strange that it's not in the phone anywhere when all the rest are. That's what makes it mysterious. one of the just the hybrids, that's still there. We'll get to it. Like Auger gets into it. So so then Nick tries to get in front of this. He's like, well, where did you find that pic? Like, if you didn't find it on the device, how do we have it in evidence? He's like, oh, I found it on the internet. So, exhibit 226, the picture of Abby walking on the high bridge, is not actually taken from Libby's device. It is taken from somewhere on the web. So, there you go. All right. So, Nick also asks about the measurement. He's like, all right, so I forgot to ask you about like this thing with the flights. Remember when I asked you originally, like if you ever figured out like what one flight equated to? He's like, oh yeah, I remember. He's like, yeah, I figured it out eventually. I Googled it or something. He's like, the elevation change. So a flight equals 16 steps. 16 steps equals 20 feet. Or 10 feet. I'm sorry. So there were a total of 32 steps. So the elevation change for the girls was 20 feet. And then Nick was basically done. All right, so then we get the cross. Auger gets up there. And she loves, like I said, she loves feeding Cecil lunch. It's like her favorite pastime. She loves to feed him lunch. Here, I'm gonna feed you your lunch, Chris. So she digs in with 226, the picture. She's like, so State's Exhibit 226, you found that on the internet. Yeah. It's like, yeah. And so she says, okay, well, all right. Do you know where? He's like, I don't know. Like I Googled it or something. Google. It's like, what did you Google? He's like, I don't know. Like picture of Abby on the bridge or something. I don't know. Like he didn't have an answer. So she walks over to the table where they're storing all the evidence, the exhibits that have been admitted. She comes back and she's like, okay. She's like, well, you have like you're acting here as if this thing is time stamped, and she holds up the picture that he got from the internet, and it says like, so this is clearly from somebody else's Snapchat that took a screen grab of Abby's post when she posted it to her story, and like on this thing it says 7 hours later, right? She's like, how are you sitting here? How have you ever sat here and said if you didn't get it off the device that picture was taken at 2:07 p.m. Like what 7 hours from where? Like where did you get that information? Because remember, like we've always been told that picture of Abby on the bridge is at 2:07 p.m. and this dude didn't even find it on the device. We don't have the metadata for it. So now we come to find out that he pulled it off the internet from somebody else who had screenshot the snap, and then there's what he considers to be a timestamp, as the timestamp says that it's 7 hours later. 7 hours from what? All right, so he says he has no idea who put the time on there, and he says like I don't 7 hours from what? He's like I have no idea. He's like I don't know when 7 hours was. So we've got the picture taken at 1:40. And these were all contained in the Snapchat cache. All right, so you've got the 1:40 picture that that Libby took right before the picture she took of her selfie with Abby in the background. So that's found in the Snapchat cache. At 1:41, the selfie with Abby in the background, that picture is taken and it is found in the Snapchat cache. 1:43, we get the first picture of the Monon High Bridge. That picture is found in the Snapchat cache. At 2:05 p.m., we get the picture of I forget what it is. I forget, but another one of the bridge. And then at 207, and that one is found in the Snapchat cache. And then 207, they did not find on the Snapchat cache this, and it's not in the camera roll. It's weird. Like, where did it go? So Auger asks the question, which is a great question. It's a great question. Somebody took that picture, and it would stand to reason. So you have to follow her logic here. If everything that preceded it in the minutes before it, all the pictures that preceded it, every single that she took through the Snapchat app, if all of those were in the cache of the Snapchat cache, and this last picture of 207 is not in there or in the camera roll, she asked the question, isn't it possible that someone else posted that picture on Libby's account from a different device? Not only is it possible, to me, it seems likely, which opens up a whole nother can of worms. All right. What time is it, guys? God. Oh my God. It's after midnight. You guys. Oh, you guys. I love you so, though. All right. Okay. Remember, tomorrow I'm the first one doing this. I'm beating Andrea. I'm beating Lee. I'm beating them to the punch tomorrow. I'm just jumping on. I'm going knee deep into the muck. Oh, I think I know who's testifying tomorrow. I got a scoop over here. I think it's going to be a big law enforcement day. That's your hint. Big law enforcement day of testimony tomorrow. All right, so we've got her asking that great question. And then she starts getting into the phone data is used because she asks a question like in these kinds of cases, Mr. Cecil, First Sergeant Cecil, we use phone data because it's reliable, right? Yeah. Apple Health, it's reliable, right? That data is reliable. Knowledge C is reliable, right? And then she asks him, she says, okay, he says, yes, that's all reliable. She says, okay, now specifically with this is the trap. This is where she starts laying the trap. So she asks those questions. Those are all like when you hear a lawyer asking those types of questions where they're trying to get confirmation of the witness that this is some shit we can trust, right? We can trust this data, like rock solid. Yeah, 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 we can trust it. So it says, okay. But let's talk specifically about knowledge C, right? Knowledge C. All right. Tell me a little bit about the knowledge C encrypted cache. And Cecil sits there like, he says, I don't understand the question. So, okay. All right. So tell me about the knowledge C encrypted cache. It's like, I, he's like, I don't, what? I've never heard of that. That doesn't exist. He's like, that's not something I've heard of. She's like, oh, all right. I've never heard of it, he says. Direct quote. So she's like, okay. She's like, let's move on. So remember that though. So Cellubrite allows for physical extraction, logical, okay. And she called it like a logic. So there's different types of extraction. So physical extraction is the phone. So the logical, which is what the method one was, They consider that, she says, it's like, she describes it as over the hood. It's kind of like you get your phone, you look at it, the shit that you're seeing, that's what it extracts. You're not getting the deep deep. You're not getting the down low. You're not getting the dirty down there, right? It's just like the shit that you see, that's method one extraction, which is essentially illogical. Okay, so there's advanced logical, right? And she says that gives you more. Give you your iPhone backup, give you full file extractions, and give you knowledge C, give you power logs, system files. It's really, you're under the hood with that. You're in the know. You're getting down to the nitty gritty. You're really getting into the heart of that little computer that you walk around with in your pocket. And and then she says, like, and like, Apple doesn't tell forensic guys. Like, they're not sending out memos. Did you get the TPX report about the new shit we put in our phone? That doesn't happen. That's not going down. Apple doesn't operate like that. And then so she asks a question. She says, "Well, tell me about the power off log. What do you know about the power off log?" He's like, "What? What do you talk about? Power off log? What is that?" He's like, "You mean the shutdown log?" And she's like, "Okay." She's like, "Are they different things, or like, so?" Okay, so I'm calling it the power off log or the power down log, and you call it the shutdown log. All right, so I think we're talking about the same shit, maybe. She's like, how long does that stay in the power C or the knowledge C cache? And he's like, it's volatile. It changes, depends. And he's like, that's where it's like, it's that first in, first out shit. If it's first thing in, it's gonna get bounced. So it's a volatile thing. It changes. So she says then, so when Bunner charged the phone and turned it on, it cleared the shutdown log, didn't it? And his answer to that question, meaning going back to where he says he testified on direct. I want you to put this together. So back where he testified that no one had turned off the phone during the period of time. Okay. And she did not spell this out for everybody in the court. I hope everybody got it. I mean, she played it beautifully. She left this tantalizing link between these two things that at some point she is going to connect, and they're in deep shit. It's just like Osbrook's comment. If you go back and look at his last comment, like not this one at 12:05 before, when he was talking about the phone power, his testimony was that he never found any evidence on the phone that the phone powered off between the 5:37 and the 4:33 a.m. We now know, at least according to Cecil, that when Bunner charged the phone and turned it back on at 3:06 on the 4 p.m. on the 14th, that it cleared the shutdown log out of the cache. Meaning that's why you didn't find any information about whether the phone had been turned off during that 11 hours. It's pretty substantial. It's pretty substantial. I caught it. I don't know if everybody else caught it. I caught it. And it was well played by Auger. So then she's like, and you know what? You know what I love about her is that she doesn't blink an eye. That she knows that this dude just like fucked it. You know what I mean? Like she doesn't like she didn't even like I don't remember her turning around and giving like a wink to like Brad and Andy. It's like typically like it's hard not to have a reaction when internally you've done something significant during the course of an examination. So then she starts talking about iMessage, and then she says that she explains it that so she says well, two fine iPhone users can use a message when using encrypted mode, right? If because they're using their network, their cellular network, and then she says that um, or no, she says that it's using their iPhone to iPhone like that network, whereas SMS is delivered through towers. Okay, and then she says that so they kind of get into this a little bit of a discussion about the phone continued to receive uh, calls and messages. And then he says so she says at 4:06 through 4:33 a.m. there's zero SMS messages come in until 4:33 when they all flood in. So he says and she clarifies. So said at 4:33 p.m. Liberty's phone receives 15 messages. Why? And he restates, he's like, I don't know why. No idea. I don't know why. And she said that those are time stamped from the tower when they're received, meaning that if you're to look at all those SMS messages, every single one of them is going to show a received time of 4:33. That's how it reads on the recipient's phone. Whereas iMessages show up on my phone. If Allie sends me an iMessage, because we both have iPhones, it's showing me when she sent it. That's the difference between iMessage and SMS. So everything that floods in through the tower, that was delivered through the tower to the phone, what we're seeing is the time that the phone received it, which is they're all saying 4:33 a.m. So then she dips her toe back into the cache encrypted B file that she asked him about earlier that he said, "Oh, I don't know." She's like, "Well," she's like, "Would it help?" She's like, "Remember when I deposed you and we were just talking about all kinds of stuff, all the phone stuff, talking about everything phones." She's like, "Yeah, I remember it." She's like, "You don't remember talking about the cache encrypted B file?" It's like, "No." He's like, "Well, all right." He's like, "Fortunately, I have your deposition here. Would help refresh your recollection if I brought it to you and you could take a peek at it." She's like, "I thought that maybe you might not remember this, so luckily I pulled these pages out and I have them handy right here." She's like, "Yeah, that would help refresh my recollection." So she walks up here and she's like, "So, I gave you the page before for context, just so you can kind of see what we were talking about, and then read and see if you see anything about the cache encrypted B file." And so "Yeah, okay, I read it. It takes a few minutes." So she says, and like everybody's fighting not to do with the "you would agree with me" thing. So she changed it slightly. She said, "Can we agree that it's a database that exists on the phone, that the cache encrypted B file is a database that in fact does exist on the phone?" Because he said, "Well, you're reading it out of context. I was saying I didn't know what it was," but she's like, "I understand that you don't know what it is. But just because you don't know what it is doesn't mean that it doesn't exist on the phone." So that's when she says, "Can we agree?" Because remember, Judge Gull's not allowing them to say what you would agree. You would agree with me. They're not allowed to say that. So that she says, "Can we agree that it is in fact a database that exists on the phone?" And he has to say yes. By the way, I saw Gull look over at Nick when she said the "can we agree" thing. Nick didn't object. He must have been like over it at that point. And then she says, And it contains information. Yes? It says yes. Yes, it does. All right. So 2017, there were the 3 reports. We're talking about the 3 extraction reports, 2 by Bunner and then 1 by Homeland Security or Customs, one of the 2. It was Feds, one of the 2 Fed agencies. And so then he took all that information and he made a timeline from it. All those extractions, he made a timeline from it. So she points out, she hands him Defendant's Exhibit P, and she asks question, all entries on that timeline. So this is where I think this smells like a trap to me. So she takes Exhibit P, all right, which I think she described, but I can't remember what she said it was. She said, question, so all entries on that timeline, and I think it's his timeline, but it's a defense exhibit of his timeline, Cecil's timeline. I think they didn't put it up. Like Auger wasn't using the big monitor. So all entries on that timeline are true and accurate, correct, Mr. Cecil? He says, yes, they are. And she says, okay, that's good. I'm happy about that. Now, is there anything, now that you're looking at that, at your timeline there, is there anything that you need to edit or correct? He looks at it, says, no, it's good. And so she restates it. So no edits, no corrections. That's good. Says that's correct. She enters it into evidence. So everyone, write in your little notebook. I want you to remember Defendant's Exhibit P. And let's see if Bob's right. Let's see if that's a little trap. It smells like a trap to me. Because she just kind of like drops it like a hot rock. Smells like a trap. Smells like a trap. All right. So as far as, so she then touches on movement in the car, and then she says that people are still. She says the fact is the people are still trying to figure out how in the hell that phone shit works, right? And he's like, yeah, that's true. And she says, and that includes you, right? He's like, yeah. Well, and he's like, well, actually, he said, well, she said, and that includes you. And he's like, well, like what? Like, what do you mean? She's like, well, like for instance, it's like you didn't have all the answers. Like, what about the fact that you said that it might track steps while in driving mode? Isn't might the operative word? Says, yeah, because it's definitely not a definitive. It's no, and she said it actually isn't a speed bump. It's speed bump that might fool the car into walking, that you're walking, because it's all about the phone, the gyrometer or whatever the hell it's called. That it's walking. It thinks you're walking. It's moving up and down. It's all about a movement thing. All right, so and then she asked, so Gray Key can recover deleted files, and then LG's cell phone. She just like kind of asked this question, and then she like this could be another trap. I don't even know. She would seem like she was setting traps left and right because she would just ask some shit and then just like leave it out there. So she's got it on the record. She's got this guy saying affirmative answers. She says, Gray Key can recover deleted files, right? And he says, yeah. And then she says, Liberty German's phone. You recovered some deleted files from there, didn't you? And I'm like, what? I'm like, all right. Slipping up on my shit. I'm like, now we getting some shit. And he says yes. And then she moves on. I'm like, God damn it. What's going on here? So that could be another trap. He's getting affirmative answers on a lot of things, and she's kind of like leaving him dangling there, like real low-hanging fruit that's waiting to get picked. All right, so then she gets into Bunner connected to a network in terms of information that was downloaded, and then Mcleland made an outside the scope objection. She said, wait a second. It's like, he testified to it. He talked about Bunner connecting to the tower. She said, okay, overruled. You can answer. And she said there's other ways to get info from the cloud other than, because she was starting to get into like, it wouldn't it have been best practice to get a search warrant to pull that shit from the cloud? She said there's other ways to get info from the cloud, cloud data, right? She said, and he said, yeah. And she says that, so she's like, I just want to be clear. So every time that you plug in and turn on the phone, you're losing data. Yes. And you also lose data over time. And he says, well, when you power the phone on, yes. And then she gets into the feds requested phone data in 2017. And then they sent it to Homeland Security and they did an extraction. And they lost data then, didn't they? So then this is where it gets really interesting. At least this is why I think that's like the couple that I do not speak of, like ran out of the courtroom. I think that they're giving this, I'm dying to know if they're giving this way more significance than it deserves. So she then asks these questions to end her cross-examination. So now I want to talk to you about Richard Allen's devices. We're like, oh, like she had me on the edge of my seat on 3 separate occasions because there's 3 things that she brought up that I really, really, really have been dying to know. So she says, isn't it true that there is nothing on any? So first, I take it back. First, she had him. She says, so you did searches on Richard Allen's devices, correct? He says, yes. How many? He's like, can I look at my report? She says, sure, go ahead. He just goes, and remember, this isn't phones, it's devices. The words matter. We have no idea how many phones this is. We have no idea if this is hard drives, computers, which I'm sure it is. Everything that contains data, they grabbed from that house. So he says 23 devices. That's what we took from that house. 23 devices. That's what we got. And on all those devices, she says, you found nothing on any of them that connects Richard Allen to either Libby German or Abigail Williams. Did you? Says no. And he says, you also, on all those 23 devices that you have extracted all the data from and have all these different things to look through, nothing on any of those devices ties Richard Allen to the murder of Liberty German and Abigail Williams, does it? He says, no. She calls it a day. So I'm like, damn. I had heard the nothing on the devices connected them to the girls. I hadn't heard the nothing connected them to the murder. So then Nick gets up and he goes over a few things. And he says, the guys just want to be clear. So from 2:32 p.m. until 4:33 a.m., Libby German's phone records no movement. He says, that's right. No movement. That phone did not move. Maybe. He didn't say that. Maybe I added that. So then we get to the question. This is the big question. He says, so how many devices from RA's house were analyzed again? 23. He said, were you able to note the date that all those devices were released to the public? And he said, yes, to all the cell phones. Okay. And he said that Rick Allen had a cell phone in 2017, correct? He says, yes, he did. And he says, during the course of your investigation, you were able to identify what the MEID number of that cell phone that Rick had in 2017 was, weren't you? And he said, yes, I was. And he says, okay, so now you've extracted all these devices, specifically the phones we're talking about. Did you compare the MEIDs with all the devices that you tested to the MEID of the 2017 phone that Rick had. Did any of those MEIDs match Rick's 2017 MEID from those 23 to the phone that he had in 2017? He says that it's like that phone was not analyzed. His 27 phone wasn't analyzed. We didn't find a device that had that MEID on it. So you're like, ooh, man. Ooh, what happened to the phone? Where the phone at? So I'm like, oh man. So then Auger gets up and she says, he ends it on that. He thinks it's like a mic drop. I think other people probably think it's a mic drop, right? So Auger says, well, when did you get these devices, all these different devices from his house? And he says, I believe we got him on the search on November 8th, 2022. And then so as soon as Auger starts asking the question, well, most people don't keep the same cell phone for 5 years. Nick stands up and objects. And he says, calls for speculation. And Gull sustains it. And Auger says, okay, sits down. So that's where it's left on that cliffhanger. It's a real cliffhanger. I'm sure the Torch and Pitchfork crew are like, oh, we got him. He threw away his phone. Or it was lost or destroyed. I mean, the one thing that we know about phones is that there's always a record unless you're buying a burner. And sometimes even then, if you've connected it to an account that is your service provider, you're going to get a burner on, on the grid too. But like your shit's on the grid, yo. Like they're gonna like there's going to be records in terms of when a phone was no longer in use, when a new phone began being used. I mean, look, it could potentially be huge for the state. If it is, if Rick got rid of his phone 2 days after the murders, that's super sus. But I have to believe that if that happened, that Nick Mcleland would have brought it up during opening statements. Because that would become one of the most damning pieces of evidence they had. So we'll find out what happens with it. It was interesting for sure. I've never kept a phone for 5 years. I mean, was whatever data, did they test a device that Rick had and like he had transferred all his shit from his old phone to a new phone through the cloud? I mean, maybe, probably. I mean, those are things that remember the state didn't bring up during their direct examination of their own witness. That only got brought up after Auger asked the questions about no link. That was their way of trying to. So now, when the state puts their phone people on and they're able to give an explanation, if they are, as to was the data that was on a phone in 2017, was it transferred to a new phone? or was able to give an explanation of why that phone in 2017 no longer exists. I mean, it's like you have to wonder why the state didn't bring it up if it was smoking gun evidence when they had the opportunity to talk to the guy who extracted all the phones, all the devices of Richard Allen. I mean, are we to think that Nick was so clever in terms of being able to read the minds of the defense that they were definitely going to ask that during the cross and that he had set that trap for them? Because like he's making the scope on direct, meaning they can't make some kind of object. He could bring up whatever the hell he wants during direct, presuming that his witness has knowledge about it and can testify, which this dude did. So it's interesting. It was an interesting way to close out the day. As you can imagine, the jury had a shit ton. They love the tech stuff. They love the tech stuff. Like the two most voluminous amount of questions that they asked have been regarding the tech stuff. So the questions from the jury, and they were like, I'm going to flat out tell you, they went so fast. She reads the questions so fast and doesn't repeat them. Like by this time, my hand looked like a claw. Like I had to like fit the pen in like through this finger and this finger kind of like right like this. It was tough. I was trying to keep up. So I'll do the best I can with them. First, referring to your first report, First Sergeant Cecil, 205 bridge picture, picture of the high bridge. Did you ever locate that photo? Said no. Question two, what are all the blank spaces on your report? And this is again still relating to the first report. When you looked at it, there were a bunch of like kind of grayed out areas. What are all the blank spaces on your report in the line for the battery? He says the gray spots. He's like there was no information there. So instead of just kind of like leaving it sitting there, I just filled it in with blanks. We just didn't. There was zero information about it. And he says, how does the phone receive messages without cell tower signal? So that's, he says, through either Wi-Fi or through like an internal network, like iMessaging. He says, did you ever check they asked this great question. Did you ever check with AT&T to see if they were having issues with that tower? So they're trying to dip into, the jury's trying to figure out why that shit might not have been hitting the phone till 4:33 a.m. He says, no, I never checked with AT&T. And interestingly, Auger asked the question, that's not like normally something you as a digital forensic guy would do, right? Like call to find out if towers are fucked up. It's like, yeah, that's not something I would do. So 5 was the Snapchat keep photos. She read this way too fast. It was a convoluted question, but it was still good though. I knew what they were getting at. Does Snapchat keep photos that are placed in a story? And he says no, that Snapchat doesn't. But like again, you can toggle it so that it goes to your camera roll. And he says that's what he says, that it would be saved in the camera roll. So and then they asked the photos that are sent through Snapchat to a friend on the phone, can they be saved? And he said, I don't know. Yeah, I think that it's the same thing. You can do screen grabs. If your friends on Snap send you a picture, you can screen grab it, and they get a notification that you screen grabbed it. I think same with the story, but don't quote me on that. I don't know shit about Snapchat. Okay, and then I think there was a question I just missed. So she says, can iMessages be sent via cellular service? And he said, yes. If sent through the tower, connected. If it's sent through a tower, though, it'll come in as an SMM. So it's not really an iMessage then. Like for us, it changes color. Like if it turns into an SMS, it goes from being like green to blue, I think. All right. I'm way behind on this shit. Oh my god, and I still have to do your questions. Oh, what time is it? Oh my god, guys, it's almost 1. Gotta get up in like it seems like in just a few hours. Okay, then they had a great question. It was super techy and long, and I was like, I couldn't like. Hopefully, Andrea or Lee got it. It was something about cumulative shit, so I missed it. Did the method 1 extraction extract the knowledge C data? And he said no. And then could Snapchat videos or photos be deleted? Be deleted by when the phone is turned on and off, like because of lack of usage. And he says no. Like those are say like user made things are not going to get deleted, which I think if you've saved them to your camera roll from Snap, they're like exempt from being deleted from lack of usage, like the things that fall off when the phone is turned on and off. So there was question, Snapchat photos are stored in the Snapchat cache, not knowledge C. Is it possible that Snapchat cache or cache, that some photos, oh yeah, man, I was losing it here. Okay, so I kept trying to rewrite this question 3 times. So could Snapchat photos not be saved depending on how they were posted? Meaning, okay, so if it was to the story or if it was to a friend, and they're talking about it in the cache, and he says, I don't know. Like he doesn't know shit. He just doesn't know. He doesn't know shit like about Snapchat. Like he's just doesn't know. All right. And then he says, do you know why, or could you explain why you find some Snapchat photos and not others? No. And then Liberty German account could have been accessed by another phone, correct? And that was Auger re-asking him. And he said, yes. And so does data tell you the start time of the 2 flight climbs? And he said, yeah, it was at 2:32. And then what happened to I don't know what the hell this. Oh, so they asked what happened to the Apple Health data at 2:18:48 to 2:25. He's like, where'd it go? He says it's not missing. There was just no movement. And then they asked, how did you determine? So this was their last question, and to me, it was the most important. So how did you determine that RA Richard Allen had no connection to the girls on his devices? And he's like, because there was no information found on any of his devices. There was no internet search history. There was no messaging. There was nothing connecting to the girls. And then Nick stood up and he said, well, but you did locate an internet search about the girls after the murder. And he says, yeah, that's true. And then Auger stood up and she said, but you don't know. And again, this is on just a device. We don't know what it could be, an iPad that everybody uses. So he says, but you have no idea who accessed that search about the girls being missing. Like Kathy. So that was it. That wrapped it. All right. Real quick. I gotta get through the questions. Gotta get through the questions. Looks like the girls pulled some shit out for me because they love me. All right. So first thank yous and questions. So Miss B's Crafting Life, new member, family hug. We are Cosmic Dust. Love that handle. New member, family hug. Welcome. We're Cosmic Dust, $5. How far is the access road to where the girls were found? Is it a drivable route between the two? Thank you for all you do, Bob and Allie. Super drivable. It's right there. It's like right. It's like the access road is like right there. Like that's what the defense is saying, that the girls, once they got down to the hill, you hit that access road, and that the girls were brought down to the hill and ushered into a vehicle potentially and whisked away, and then the horrible things happened and they were brought back, and that somebody turned the phone on, left it under Abby's body so the girls could be discovered. So thank you for your generosity. Jolene, $9 hollow, $10 hollow. Actually, thank you very much. Jessica Miller, $5 hollow. Thank you very much. How did the jury handle all the evidence shown today? Like champions, really. Who made me small? Oh, hi. Missy's back here messing around. I'm assuming that you're talking about the disturbing autopsy photos. I had said this earlier. I was incredibly impressed with their, like, there was no one showing any emotion. They were all engaged in looking at the photographs, and I'm telling you, this jury is legit. Legit. Like, there was no crying on the jury. Like, they're keeping it professional. Like, these are some jurors that are taking this shit super seriously. I really respect the hell out of them. So, habitual line stepper, I could not love that handle more than I do. It's actually it's like my line. They say I'm a habitual line stepper. So $5 hollow, I worked, and that's no bullshit. I worked with SC circa 2015. Not surprised. All right, so we got a Snapchat Pro in there. K-Dog, thank you for that sweet $5 hollow. K-Dog 8173, thank you once again. I feel you. Still want a drone pilot. I'm licensed with I don't know what that is. DJI phone drone. I'm not drone smart, bro. So I'm gonna trust you that that's dope. I'm 8 miles away from Delphi, free of charge. Check out the trees and the Roosevelt beef steaks around. Dude, I love it. I love it. Email me, bro. Email me, man. Johannes Windleberry, $10 hollow. 2 questions. Has there ever been a case that affects you this much? I mean, cases that I tried, yes. Yes, obviously, cases that I tried. But in terms of cases that I have covered, no, not even close. Like I've been all in on this since the arrest. I mean, I live two hours away from Delphi, 2 and some change. I've always followed the case. I wasn't into the speculation and trying to be a web sleuth, trying to, figure the case out without having the evidence. That wasn't for me. But as soon as the arrest was made, I've been all in. I've been to every hearing. So yeah, no, it's like I've been just obsessed with this case. I'm like so thrilled that I'm at this trial. So are there times when you've mentioned Court TV, but I haven't been able to find you? I was on tonight with Vinny. Do I consult with them? I go on their shows. Like, I was on with Vinny on Vinny Politan Investigates tonight. So thank you for that $10 hollow. But keep finding. Like, you should follow me on Twitter if you're on Twitter, because I always post there when I'm going on Court TV. Because Law and Crime doesn't do the hosty thing anymore. Afton coming through with the 5DD memberships. Thank you so much. Johannes comes back. Another $5. Does one man cut 2 girls' throats without their hands being tied? No ligature marks. That's facts. No ligature marks on the wrist. It's tough. I mean, you gotta, they're gonna have to do it. Denise Miller, new member. Oh, family hug. Underachiever, new member. Oh, family hug. Allie, that's crazy. They didn't extract earlier to see if someone made plans with them. I agree, babe. That is a joke. Bob is not handling what legal advice? Oh yeah, I was obviously joking about that. Nor legal advice. Oh my God. Look at my wife. What the fuck? Allie. Michelle N. $10 holla. Notebook fun. Love you. Thank you. I definitely need I've switched over to the mechanical pencils. I've decided they're way better than pens. I like them. You don't have to press as hard. That is not right. Shouldn't be just reprocessing it all in the chart. All right. So you guys read, I don't have to read Allie shit. You guys read it, I assume. Court of Public Opinion. Bob and Allie are doing a hell of a job delivering the details. Appreciate you, Public Opinion. Appreciate you. Steph Mama, why was there no fingerprints taken from the phone? I think they tried, I would assume. I hope the defense brings this up. Is Holman or Lazenby testing later? I think so. very, very soon. Maybe tomorrow. Carbon. So is the data from the Abby pic on the phone, even though her pic is not on the camera roll? We don't know. We don't know. It's not on the phone. They couldn't find that Abby pic on the phone. That's why Auger asked, is it possible that somebody accessed her account and somehow got that picture and used it from a different account? Like, I don't know. It's crazy. Daniel Napper wasn't reported earlier that Libby was having problems with her phone and Libby or the family did a factory reset on her phone. I don't know. I did not. There's not coming in testimony, and I'm not in the business speculating at trial. I'm all about the facts now. I don't know. I like it. Maybe somebody in the chat knew that. That has not been testified to. That I can tell you. Pop Tardy B, love you. Love you, love you. Thank you for the consistently great coverage and analysis. Appreciate you. Oh, $5 holla from the wife. Processing and old extraction is bullshit. So they were stuck with the God, babe, typos. I can't even like context isn't helping me. With the parameet, the first guy used which did not track weeks earlier. So they were stuck with I don't know, babe. Sorry. I got the Apple. I get that Apple is super secretive, but this is the best data analysis they can come up with. Seems like it. I mean, it's their expert. Did they find any convo with Keegan Klein? Not that we know of. I mean, I read you everything that was testified to today, kids. So that's it. Did anyone answer the question about did the defense get to analyze the phone? Which phone? Libby's? I mean, they got the report. I do not know if they were able to. What would have happened is that their expert would have gotten the extraction and they should have been able to run it themselves. So, but we'll find out when their experts testify. Aspiring, I vote for a roundtable with D'Amato's, Andrea, and Lawyer Lee at some point. I agree. I'm sure we'll make that happen. Like maybe we'll do something like maybe something cool would be like when the three of us get together right after closings and just lay it all out there. I'm gonna pitch that to the girls tomorrow. All right, so Emily, $5 holla. Sarah's testimony stinks of covering up for something. I'm not the conspiratorial type, but this whole thing stinks. Grateful for your service. I appreciate you. Thanks for that $5 holla. Appreciate you. Riscalis, did they record battery life when the phone was found? Last charge of phone. How long would the phone last on standby? I think I answered those. Like everything that we have, like I just told you. Like, so, like they don't have, like they lost it. I don't know if you're still here because this is from almost an hour ago, actually over an hour ago. So I got to that question. Pantuflay, Bob, you just want to make, must make you just want to hug your girls extra, Bob. 100%. Definitely. $2 holla. Mad Hatter, $20 holla. Has anyone started a stenography machine fund for Bob's finger? God, Mad Hatter, I love you. And so Allie doesn't have to try to put together his hieroglyphics. Point. Two great points. Asking for the lovely models. Appreciate you so much, Mad Hatter. My Bebo. Has there been any buzz about the $350,000 reward money possibly in connection with today's witness, Sarah Carbaugh, in her hostile testimony today? Interesting. There has not been any chat about that. I love that. So is she the one identifying the killer? Doesn't seem like it. Didn't Kelsey have her login info? We don't know. Hasn't come up yet. Has RA's daughter been there? No, she has not. I think she has they have a new kid. As a matter of fact, I know they do. Pantuflay, the one in 2017 phone that's missing, did he get rid of it? Did Ali? Are you talking about the 2017 phone? We don't know. But I mean, they didn't ask. The state didn't ask. They didn't bring it up. Like if they had some smoking gun evidence that he disposed of the phone, like his phone records, I mean, maybe they have a witness who's going to come on and say some shit like that. Like, but in terms of what they've examined, like if he got a new phone, which I mean, it's in this world, people are getting a new phone in a 5-year period. right? So I don't know, it could it have been lost or destroyed? When? I guess will matter. Like if I'm the state, I'm going to certainly focus on if that 2017 phone gets damaged 2 weeks after the murders. Defense has a problem. $2 hollow coffee in the morning. Thanks, Bob. What was Richard Allen like? He was, like I said, he's been very engaged in this trial, very talkative, looks normal, is talking. He's listening to all the witnesses. He's paying attention to the whole trial. He's there. He's there for it. Love to Bob for doing this, and his family for supporting him. Here, for real. My kids. Johannes is back. Counsel, rhino-sized hamster or hamster-sized rhino? I'd have to say hamster-sized rhino, 100%. I got to keep that thing in my pocket. Keith, would it have been reasonable for investigators to pull tower and or knowledge C data from the earlier BG witnesses to corroborate the timeframes they claimed? Keep it up. Love the coverage. Hell yeah. Like the only one that they had any kind of timestamp from was what's her face? The second girl, not Ray Lee, Brienne. So she had taken the one Snapchat at 1:26 p.m. where you saw the old Mears farm behind it, which puts her pretty close to the Freedom Bridge at 1:26, which blew Ray Lee's timeline out of the water. It's like, I'm like, why did they put these two witnesses, one who destroys the timeline of the other one? They're seeing Bridge Guy in a group, then when they're together at completely different times, like 45 minutes apart. I didn't know why they did it. So appreciate that $10 holla, brother. K-Dog, another two. How do I email you? If you need footage, I'll help. It's Bob at defensediaries.com. All right, you guys are amazing. I love you. Thank you for hanging so late. I got to go to bed. I got to get up. I got to go write for you more tomorrow and take copious notes. You guys are amazing. I love you so much. My mods you're beautiful. Every single one of you mods is beautiful, and I love you. I think you're just amazing. Missy hanging in the whole way. It's just beautiful. Go look in the mirror and admire just how fantastic and beautiful of a human you are right now. I love you guys because without y'all, I'm just some old man talking about a whole bunch of cases. Talk to you tomorrow. Brighten